Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Aurora. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. Today, what I'm doing is somewhat of a blending. Technically, it's level 2, lesson 4, which is telepathy and the higher senses. But I'm also going to bring in some of the introductory materials from level 1 so that you know what I'm talking about when I talk about the chakras of the body. And we will draw pictures, all right? And I'm sure that more people will be tuning into class. I'll have to admit more people to the meeting. So wait, let me make sure that I pull up my class notes effectively. Knew that would happen over here. So we got that over there, and we have a picture right over here. Good. See, I knew people would be tuning in. So first, let's start off with doing a screen share. Privacy over here. Okay, so what do I mean when I talk about the higher senses? Here where I'm wiggling my cursor, you can see the entire arrangement. There's the human figure, the anthropomorphic form in the middle, and then you can see the entire arrangement from the largest scale chakra or vortex-shaped energy center that surrounds the entire physicality presence and can even extend for several feet, quite far beyond the limits of your epidermis. And within that, there are the fractal, smaller levels of your energy center. So that's red is the largest one for the physical, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Let me tune in here now on this area. I call this the higher faculties because everything up from green is really what has formerly been defined as your higher self. And a lot of what I'm sharing here today is recontextualizing and making you aware of things in a new way that you already are aware of for the purposes of growth. Wait, I'll admit that person to the meeting. Because for a very, very long amount of time, humanity was defined by these three chakras, red, orange, and yellow. A physical body is red, can agree, have a physical cellular presence. Orange is mammalian emotions, and almost everybody has felt emotions such as anger or hatred or even attraction or cuddliness. Those are all orange level mammalian emotions. Almost everyone can agree those things exist, even like the staunchest atheistic materialist scientist. And then a thin layer of yellow on top of that. And yellow in this diagram represents the cerebral cortex. It represents cognitive function of the mind that humans know as the mind, but which is, as we will talk about throughout this whole entire class, a non-natural implantation. This level right here of yellow is really the critical limitation or obstacle that was placed into the human energy field and into human genetics that have prevented humans from effectively accessing all of this good stuff over here. And all of this good stuff over here, I call your higher faculties. Technically, I call this your heart as like the fulcrum, the center point of these various aspects of your being. It is like a plateau of energy that all of these abilities then rest upon. And you can even see, and I will make it very, very scaled up for your imagery here. This is the vertex point coming together of yellow, which is the level of your daily waking intellect and of your ego. And you can see how this circle here that is actually a light blue circle, turquoise, that centers at the throat over here right at your larynx. That circle nests perfectly within this orange. Oh, sorry, I said the wrong word. Within this yellow energy center. So your throat is directly connected to this yellow center. Throat is not merely communication, it is also properly defined as authenticity. And then, of course, secondarily, speaking, singing, gesturing, writing, dancing, anything that involves communicating or building stuff with your arms. So that's an important interrelationship to recognize there, that upon the foundation of the daily waking intellect, there is the ability to be authentic. And you can also comprehend that these chakras are interrelated, just like gears or water wheels. If there is an instability in one of them, it will destabilize the other ones that are attached or dependent upon one another. So this whole entire apparatus is interdependent. And that's why there is not just one effective way to just energize one energy center. Sorry, those words didn't fit together properly. There's not an effective way to just energize one energy center, which is often how it is portrayed. Like here I am right now gesturing at the dark blue energy center. This is really focused symbolically at the center of the forehead, where I'm always speaking. I'm always pointing. We're going to speak a lot about this today. Your Christ consciousness, your eye of insight, your third eye. But you can see that that is very much related to the violet chakra. And so there's lots of chemicals and practices and things that people do to be able to try to bring a lot of extra energy to their eye of insight, this blue level. It is very much a powerful place on the body. It's like saying, I want my tomato plant to have more tomatoes, because the tomatoes are the thing that's valuable to me. It's what I want to chop up and put on my sandwich. But tomatoes don't just pop out of nowhere. They are dependent upon the entirety of the plant, including the leaves, the stems, and the root system. This stuff down here, these are your leaves, stems, and root system. It is essential to cultivate the entirety of your being in order to have this fruiting, blossoming action that happens at the higher faculties. So when people take something that is a molecule that sends a lot of energy to the third eye or the indigo area of the body, or when people do certain forms of breathing practices that send a lot of energy to that area of the body, if it doesn't have a nice strong stem to hold it up and a nice strong root system to hold it up and supply it with nutrients, it's very out of balance. So this is an entire life accomplishment to be able to transcend the blockage at the level of yellow and achieve the levels of unconditional love that are, again, the foundation for all of this higher dimensional, multidimensional perception. And today what I want to do is really focus on this area here, where your eye of insight, indigo or brow chakra, that you can see I'm wiggling my cursor horizontally, is oriented in this direction, and the crown chakra, which is violet and is oriented vertically. So I'm wiggling my cursor up and down. It's oriented vertically. And these two aspects of your higher self are complementary. And this is what gives you your real, focused, accurate, higher vision. So if you have not yet gotten to the level of activating the violet chakra and only have activated the indigo chakra, you are only seeing a partial picture of reality. You can see that this is a 90-degree angle here, where these two chakras come together. They complement one another as one is spinning around and around and around. It spins around like a whirling vortex, but it also spins around like a carousel. And then this violet chakra, it spins around like a halo. It's where you get the halo in traditional religious iconography. It spins around the top of your head, and it also spins around here at shoulder level, interactive with and supportive of authenticity. So it's, again, tied in with levels of communication and personal authenticity. And your violet chakra is hugely important because that is your divine connection. That is the highest note on the octave of you, note on your being. It's the highest vibration that is still within the definition of what we call human. Beyond that, you are going into superhuman or ascended mastery or divine connection with God. So this is like last stop, still being human on the super train. I'm being silly already. Violet chakra is an incredibly important interface between who you are as an individuated and embodied human person and your connection to cosmic consciousness, the continuum of consciousness, the oceanic or much, much larger identity of self that exists beyond your individuation in this time, place, here, now. All right. Sorry, got a little distracted because Cheeky was jumping down. And these two chakras represent two very different and distinct levels of perception. First of all, okay, this is the fun lesson where I get to tell everyone about your tendril of attention. I always use my little pen as an example of this, and I say, this is my tendril of attention, and I use it to reach out. So I'm being a little bit non-literal when I call it a tendril of attention, because attention comes from the root word attenuos, which is Greek for to reach out for. And I think that that is very apt. We're working in some levels of literalism and some levels of poetic allegory, because what is literal is that your eye of insight is shaped like this. And you're like, well, where's the thing that reaches out and touches stuff? Exactly, I know. So what you have are complementary vortexes that are running around your face, and they also create like a big, beautiful bubble or a shield around you. But that would be like a container, not necessarily something that is a connector to connect your mind and your cognitive abilities to other things, people's places, or concepts. So you have to think of your attention as a tendril, but it is an allegory, not a literalism. And you use your tendril to reach out, to touch on other people or creatures or organisms, other times and places, abstractions. For example, if you wanted to know more about the abstract nature of, I've just always used government as an example, because like, where is government? Where is it housed? Is it housed like in the Parliament building or in the Capitol building? Government activities and bureaucracies happen in different buildings and offices and bureaus, but that is not where it is located. It's a concept. So how do you touch on something that is a concept? These are big aspects of learning to control and to master your higher faculties. Your higher faculties are an aspect of ascended mastery. And let me draw this for you. Initially, starting out, so this is that wonderful piece that died a horrible death. Initially, starting out, let me make sure I have a color that you can actually see. I don't know if you'll be able to see this color. Yeah, you can kind of see that color. It's changed to something you see better. This would be about where the layer of, let's say the surface of the water is like. Let's say you're a fish, and I just drew, of course, a little cross section of the surface of the water. And everything up here would be the air, right? And everything down here is the water that you swim amidst. The water is time. And you're a little fish, and we can even draw you, you know, like the traditional fish symbol over here, right? And fish are not aware of these aspects of themselves that literally are like tendrils that stick up above the water into a higher dimensional, less dense realm, a more rarefied atmosphere where literally this fish could not inhabit that place because it has requirements to be able to be in a fluid and receive oxygen from the fluid. So it has body parts that stick up here, but it primarily resides within this denser realm. This is you in time. You are the fish, and you primarily reside within the denser realms of physicality, mammalian emotion, and daily waking ego-based intellect. But up above there, you have many aspects of yourself that are also you. This is the erroneous distinction between lower self down here and higher self up here. And in this class, you know, I've been teaching this class for a long time. We've already just steamroller, blew it out of the water, totally destroyed and eradicated. Concept of lower self versus higher self. But for anyone who isn't aware, like, more than 10 years ago, because I started this class 10 years ago, there was a big ongoing conversation, I would say, in the community of seekers. That was always a distinction of like, who I am as an ego, who I am as a person who like walks around and eats stuff and, drinks water or coffee or tea, and then versus my higher self, my spirit guides, my ephemeral aspect of self that doesn't eat, drink, make doo-doos, and is somehow wiser, finer, cleaner, better than my other aspect of self. And I am like, no, this is what I've been teaching for a long time. Both of those aspects of self are you. And your body is not gross, dirty, or disgusting, although it does have biological needs. And these other less dense, more ephemeral aspects of self are also you, and they are you moving at different rates in time. So this is big because let's say you get a directive from your higher faculties. That could be an insight or a deep knowing. Somehow you just know that you have to wake up in the morning and make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like, I just know I need to do this. When you claim ownership of the higher faculties, you're like, my higher self is telling me today's the day I'm making that PB&J, as opposed to saying, I am just a silly, lowly human, a physical container with some emotions and then a light smear of cognitive intellect on top. I have no idea what I'm doing in life, but someone else smarter than me just told me to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So it's big. This has to do with ascended mastery and the activation of these higher faculties. Those higher faculties and the messages that they bring to you are you, even as they bring to you messages that are technically from a divine source, that a source of pure intelligence that is you. But spoiler alert, it's you, like at the end of your story, at the end of many, many, many amazing multidimensional incarnations and refinement processes, then you're like, yes, I am God. So technically this whole entire apparatus is God speaking through God to God's self, and that's you on every level. But you're on the journey of awakening, so you don't necessarily know all of that stuff right now. But the key point is claiming ownership of the signals that come to you from God, divine intelligence presence, all the way through these higher faculties. And then, boom, coming here into your cognitive awareness, which is analogous to the cerebrum, which is the bumpy, convoluted surface area on the outside of the brain. So if I were to draw in neurobiological evolution, the aspects of your brain, this down here, red, would be brainstem. That's supposed to be your brainstem. And then over here is your cerebellum. And then orange would be more aspects of your cerebellum. You can't see across the drawing. And some aspects of your limbic system, mammalian emotions. And then yellow would be the bumpy, convoluted surface area outside, the outside part of your brain, where human neuroscience says that is where thought resides. Like that's the place where these little lightning bolts go from neuron to neuron and they zip and zap all around. And we're like, I'm having a cognitive thought. I'm a person. And that, of course, it's very reductionist because it's the explanation of mind from people who have mind. So you're not getting an accurate view of yourself from looking in the mirror. It is heavily biased and self-centered, which is appropriate. I mean, it's based upon your life experience and who you are in the moment. But please know that it's not accurate and definitely not the totality of your being. But for a very, very long amount of time, humanity was defined as this reductionist aspects of you, because these are the things that almost everyone can agree on. You can be like, look, there's a face there. Look, there's emotions there. Look, there's a mind there. Person is talking and using, alphanumerics. They have a mind, right? And the mind is an implant. So none of this is valid because it's not only your self-centered viewpoint of what it is to have a mind, but also the mind that you have is not your own. So I gesture wildly there. This is not the peak, the ultimate of development in what your thought processes can be. But to people who have the mind inside of them, they presume that this is the ultimate of what your mind can do. So the mind is a limiting factor. This area along here is a limiting factor where there are many, it's called glass ceiling, many expectations that it's simply not possible to move beyond there. And it has been a journey of many thousands of years for humanity to begin to be able to move beyond the level of the intellect. A big part of that has been in creating mindfulness and meditation techniques to master the mind. Because as you might have learned from your personal experience, as soon as the mind is implanted in your cognitive awareness and activated, it does not shut up. It just keeps going. And this is not just your personal problem here in this moment now, as I jump to get my wonderful, here we go, my pad full of naughty things. Not just a person who's struggling against, probably too tiny for you to read, but the things I always hold up in class here, but something that's been going on for over 5,000 years, because there are meditation techniques that are older than 5,000 years old. So you have ancient diminishments and blockades and obstacles to connecting with your higher self. And then you have more modern ones, the things that are technological that I always allude to in order to keep my ability to share things on this platform. For a very long time, humans thought that you had to go to a mountaintop or withdraw from society in order to conquer the mind, and even to get to this layer of green, which is your heart, and that is base camp. It's not the peak of the ultimate levels of self-cultivation. It is the base camp that you get to, and the ability to begin getting energy in your bank account that will activate the higher faculties. So the higher faculties, everything above your level of the heart, they run on energy. They are not, none of this is arbitrary. It's not like, sometimes you might read an aphorism or something that is very reductionist, a meme that's just like, all we need is love. It's like, yeah. It's like, it can be interpreted in so many different ways. And what is this really all about? Love is an equivalent sharing tone, not merely a nice ideal, a flimsy, fuzzy, like fuzzy, huggy ideal. And from that equal sharing tone, moving through time, one moment per moment, you are able to move at a frictionless modality that allows you to maintain your energy. I spoke about this in class last week. The endless journey of an impulse between two fixed points. Here's point A and here's point B. And here is my hand as a light beam or a beam of consciousness, jumping back and forth, bouncing upon these two perfectly aligned mirrors, having an endless, frictionless journey between two fixed points. And I have also recognized that in a world that is not a perfect world, where people have been exploited, consciousness has been exploited, harmed, and forced to go through many, many negative cycles and time loops, that you might be like, harumph, I don't like these endless loops, make it stop. But in a pristine system, an endless loop, or the endless journey of your consciousness as your consciousness is going through refinement, is a good thing. Because you're like, hooray, this ride is so great. I never want it to end. May it keep on going infinitely. So again, your existential ennui is recognized. And please know that you will feel very, very differently when you are able to experience what it is like to be in a pristine system. In a pristine system, everything makes sense. And it is very joyful and very comfortable. And it is an experience that you would wish to continue on endlessly. All right. So the love tone is a huge part of generating that endless, frictionless, positive journey of your consciousness. So meditation is not just a negation of the mind or disidentification with your ego self, as some people talk about it as like disassociating from thought patterns. Be like, don't respond to those thought patterns. Just be like, the thoughts are clouds, let the clouds float by, right? That's one way of kind of like disengaging from the mind. But really, what you want to do is disengage with the mind and have less and less verbal friction in the mind, because every time there's words, there's friction. Like, you know, when you run an engine in engineering, every place where there's heat, there's friction. As means you're losing energy. Every place where there's sound, there's friction. Like if you ever wanted to be sassy to those Harley Davidson big motorcycle guys, like start a fight with a big motorcycle guy, you'd be like, your loud engines are mechanically inefficient. Should not be making so much noise. Your engine will be much more efficient. Please don't do that. But thank you for laughing. It is truthful that those loud Harley Davidson pipes are not as efficient as they could be. Your mind, with the daily talking and chattering, is like the loud motorcycle, making a lot of vibration and utilizing a lot of energy to make that noise, as opposed to applying that energy towards actually moving forward through time. So, the chattering of the mind, I should say, the expressions of the verbalized mind slow down, inhibit, and drain energy from your flight through time, which also happens to be powered by your wonderful dance of your DNA, as I've been sharing, kind of doing the reverse sharing in how I structure this semester this year. So stilling your mind, getting it to quiet down, or distancing yourself from it. These are all different coping mechanisms. These are band-aids to be able to get your money. Your money is your money. That's your mind money. And your mind money should be able to go all the way through your heart chakra, through your throat of authenticity, and get all the way to here. This is not the end of the journey. This is one viewpoint that is not the ultimate viewpoint. The ultimate viewpoint is when you get to all the way up here. Oh, and this is a vitamin patch. I'm not injured. When you have totally different viewpoints, when you get all the way up to the top of your head. So this is the anthropomorphic viewpoint. When you activate your energy centers and are able to get enough energy together, love energy in your love bank account, to then get your inner eye awakened, you will see on the anthropomorphic level. Seeing on the anthropomorphic level means looking at things through the human view. You may see places that look like places. You may see faces that look like faces. So that means you might have an inner vision. Be like, I saw that I was on a sailing ship, and I was talking to a man who was the captain of the ship, right? And these are phenomena of light and pure information taken through your cultural filter and your species filter. And of course, like different species experience three-dimensional space differently. If you were a bat, you would not have a visual map of the world around you. You would build a sonic, auditory map of the world around you. These are just some of the like critical infrastructure of recognizing how much your body, and I talked about that in the lesson about duality last week, your body really influences your viewpoint and expectations about the world. And so not only building a sense of being in a three-dimensional box or a three-dimensional vessel, but then that there would be another organism there that you're interpreting as a human being. But this is a very flawed and inadequate level of reality perception, communication, and sharing. Because what if you wanted to be telepathic with a bat, or with a rock shrimp, or with a beautiful plant, as I point to the fern that's over here on my little plant stand? They don't have a cultural reference for the things that are important to you as a human being. This is why if you speak with human being words, those other organisms might not perceive or comprehend what you're talking about. Like if you speak with human being words to a bee, the bee will be like, I cannot smell anything. What is wrong with you? Because we communicate through smells. I can't smell your words at all. And you don't even know that bees communicate through words, because humans, the olfactory sense is so far down the scale of what is important in terms of communication with people. People are not cognitively aware of aromas and how much that influences them. Okay. So getting to the level of the brow chakra is part of the journey, but not the entire journey. And it is necessary to make the entire journey all the way up to divine connection in order to be able to have both your crown chakra and your brow chakra interrelate and give you a balanced viewpoint of reality. So when a helicopter, like your aircraft, flies through the sky, it has the propellers that go around the top like this, like an angel's halo, and then has the rotors on the back that go around like this that help with steering and balance. And that is a gyro-stabilizing effect at 90 degrees that helps to stabilize the aircraft flying through three-dimensional space. You have a gyro-stabilizing effect of your brow chakra and your crown chakra so that you can move through time. It's not about flying through space from point A to point B. It is about flying through time, experiencing timelines. So it is necessary to, when you get your energy up to the level of your anthropomorphic seeing, don't think that you've reached the peak of the mountain. Don't make a huge number of irreversible life choices and what's the word? Like digging your heels in and declaring what your truth is, what indelible truth is, for the eternal rest of your life. Because your viewpoint will change as soon as you get to the level of non-anthropomorphic seeing. So non-anthropomorphic seeing is like what I do for my paintings. Paintings are like my resume. These are abstractions, although they are very accurate abstractions that represent, much like a landscape does, a viewpoint of a real place. But it is not a place that we visit in the third dimension. It is a higher dimensional place. So I say that in that these are not arbitrary patterns, they are very correct patterns, and that they represent a truthfulness that it is my job to portray accurately. So if I was a landscape painter and I went and I saw a mountain and the mountain has a very particular shape of the peak, I wouldn't just be like, yeah, like just draw like this and this, because I'd be like, no, someone is going to want to be able to use my painting as a reference point to be like, I saw Aurora's painting of, whatever, Mount what's its name. And then I went to Mount what's its name and I saw that it looked exactly like that. I knew I was in the right spot. Okay. So I do my artwork for very intentional purposes, that way, when you see my artwork, you're getting a sense of what are the mountains shaped like. And when you go to the mountain range yourself, you will see that I was accurate, except what I paint is not a picture of the mountain, but a viewpoint from the mountain, what it looks like when you climb to the top of the mountain peak and how the world looks to you. So when you climb to the top of the mountain peak, you do not have a sense of being in a room or on a sailing ship. You have a sense of being in a higher dimensional space where there's no gravity, and there's no cultural reference point of like your floor, ceiling, or walls or anything like that. But there is formfulness and there is movement and there's everything that I've been teaching you so far: color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone. And those are all the organizational principles and really the communication that is at that level. And those abstract communications are universal. That everything, a bee that uses physical pheromones to communicate also communicates using that language of pure light in the highest dimensional place. It is one of the few commonalities that you can find with all organisms. When I hold up my little sculpture over here, you can see some really profound truths from this. Where are the surfaces connected in this sculpture? Some of the surfaces are connected right here. Red, there's a bridge from red to red. That's the physical level of reality. A bunch of things are connected here in the physical level of reality. And then here there is a hyperspace bridge, but there's no real direct path to connect those two things together. Same thing with all these other colors. So not connected, not connected. Wait, red connected. Then no, all not connected. Then finally, violet connected. This is very profound because the two places where You're able to connect with other, that I should say, it might start out even better. The places that are forums for interactivity or stages upon which events and cognitive experiences and interactions and vectors of energy can be experienced is or are in the physical realm and at the level of violet, which is the crown chakra. Those are the only two places. So if you have, let's say, an emotional energy impulse that you're going to experience and share with another organism, it actually doesn't go directly through the emotional realm, emotion to emotion. It goes to the physical realm. So that means that the energy impulse is going to circulate through your physicality, through your biological architecture, through your cell membranes, through your hormones, through your pheromones, and that emotional information will be expressed and transmitted to another person and will interact with their emotional energy, often involving words. Words cause emotions, but lots of things can cause emotions, right? Like gestures can cause emotions, or like, what if you give someone a rude gesture? I won't do it. Sometimes kids watch my show, but rude gestures can cause emotions. And then, of course, to receive the energy back from there. It's all emotional energy. The place that is the viewpoint at the top of the mountain is a very, very important place in your body and in how you connect with other forms of consciousness. That is the space, place, and viewpoint and context that you can use to connect with other forms of life, things that are not the same as your own species, things that are moving at a vastly different rate and coming from a very different direction and having a very different goal and motivation. It is the other place in pure abstraction where all of these different forces and organisms and vectors get together and have interactions. And that is very, very special and unique. So in order to get there, like, you're already in the physical. You don't have to be like, I have to get a lot of energy in my energy bank to stay in the physical. You're in the physical. That is normal for you. But because of the genetic degradations that have happened in your physical body, there have been a lot of limitation factors placed at the level of the intellect, so that it's more difficult to activate and bring energy to these higher centers. Basically, they implant the talking mind into your mind when you're a little tiny child, and it never turns off. And the friction drains your energy banks of its friction, of its constant verbalization, drains your energy banks. And also it is distracting. So your attention here, I'm holding up your little tendril of attention. It is an instrument of focus. Much like outside, I have my garden hose, and it has a nozzle on the front of the garden hose, and I can turn that. And sometimes my garden hose can be very, very, very focused, and I can spray just one plant, but it comes out like a very, very fast jet. So I don't want to like squash a little tiny plant that's only for established plants, or to make it go all the way across the whole entire garden. But my garden nozzle can also become a gentle shower, something that fans out and sprinkles a little bit on everything. This is exactly what you do when you focus your attention. So this is now, the topic today is called telepathy and the functioning of your higher faculties. What is it to focus your attention? That is to be telepathic with one organism. And that could be one person who's standing right next to you, or one person, one plant, one tree, one baby kangaroo that is standing next to you. Or it could be one baby kangaroo that is 1,000,000 miles away, or is 1,000,000 years in the future, or was 1,000,000 years in the past. It's a very, very focused beam, like a laser beam. You can have attention with a concept also. When you were in class, when you were a tiny child, and you're in your school, and you're staring out the window and, being a kid, and your teacher like knocks on the blackboard and it's like, tap, 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 pay attention. What does that mean? It means stop daydreaming, get your head out of the clouds, kid, and focus your mind over here. That is a skill that you have been taught from your education, how to focus your attention. In our world of media right now, a lot of it is about attention not being used in a positive way, but really being used to diminish you. So there are lots of like pop-up ads that come up and steal your attention. I'm like, I just want to read this important article that's about whatever, the new tax code. And then I'm reading, and then all of a sudden a pop-up ad comes up that says, do you want to lose belly fat now? And I'm like, no, I don't. And I get rid of that thing. And I'm like, all right, who am I? What was going on? Where was I? I lost my place in the article. That is destroying your attentions, destroying your focus. And think about how many things and notifications come up during your day just trying to complete a task that destroy your attention. Because it's like every time there's a text, it's like bing, and then a message that goes blank, and then an email that comes in that goes bing, and then another thing that comes across your screen. And then there's this pop-up ad that comes across your screen. Like it's very fragmenting, and it makes it very, very difficult to stay focused. So your attention is a muscle, just like muscles of your body. You can strengthen it and it can grow the more that you use it and the more that you use it in certain ways. So just like with your body, you are born with certain characteristics and then you can cultivate them with the exercises that you do. So some people might already be born with, an incredibly strong upper body, but then through doing lots and lots of exercises, they're able to lift, 300 pounds up over their head. Fantastic, great. So I bring this up because in telepathy and the higher senses, people have natural proclivities. Like a ballerina is not necessarily built to lift 500 pounds over her head, but you know what she's built for? To balance everything on the tips of her tippy toes and to be able to do stuff like that. So different bodies that are then cultivated into different specialties. So, and I talk about this a lot, and I did a beautiful interview with Lan talking about memories from Atlantis that I love, and getting very silly now. Talking about what were our psychic abilities like, because it's not all one size fits all. Your higher faculties and your telepathy, people have different abilities. So one of the abilities that we have is being able to be a focused telepath, talk to one person. And it is a great gift to be able to, let's say, far speak, to talk to someone who is very far away, to talk to one person who is 3,000 miles away. That's a beautiful gift. Or maybe planets or star systems, far, far away, but you can talk to one person with your mind. That's important. Because let's say you have a message that you're like, yeah, I don't want to have to broadcast this to the whole entire world. I just want to talk to one person about this. Very, very different than what it is to speak to a collective. This is what I do. I do both of these things. Actually, I do all these things, not to brag, but I have many, many muscles and gifts that I've cultivated. I am able to do what I call my telepathic email blast. When I get a new insight, or when I develop an antibody or an effective response to pathogenic structures that are in this world, I'm like, oh, I know how to solve it and fix it. But it's going to take me a long time if I have to get my physical cell phone and call everybody on the phone and write a blog and get this information out there. I'm like, no, let's do the most direct thing possible, which is to make my mind like a garden hose. I open up the nozzle of my mind, of my attention, and then I sprinkle the whole entire world, everybody that I'm connected to, with these concepts that I'm like, I solved the puzzle and here's what you do, and I send it out to everyone. And so I am actually able to do that to my telepathic email list. A lot of people, so that could be tens, hundreds or thousands, or possibly even hundreds of thousands of people that I'm connecting my mind to. And also to be able to do that in various different time places. You can talk to 1,000 people, and some of them might be in the here and now, some of them might be in the deep past, some of them might be in the future. We're starting to get into higher levels of non-linearity, and this speaks to my notes. My notes are worth reading, and I did include them in the email for today's live lecture, all about the time phone. Why do you have to raise your energy and go through all of these self-cultivations to be able to activate your higher faculties? And the answer is because it's a position of responsibility. Like, I don't know if you were ever a tiny child, you picked up the phone and made prank calls to naughty things. Like it's always very silly and harmless, but it can be annoying. And maybe this is not so much in a time now when phones are encrypted and require a password to open it up. But it used to be like, yeah, if you just had a regular landline, you pick up the phone and dial some numbers and ask, like, is your refrigerator running? Well, you better go catch it. Like this is like very silly, childish humor. But it is not okay to prank call people with your mind and to telepathically be naughty. And it's definitely not okay to prank or invade people's minds by putting erroneous information or lies into them or by accessing their very valuable private information from their mind. All of those are violations. So you start to recognize it might be a fun childish prank to pick up the physical phone and, disturb a business owner. But it becomes a big deal. If you call the past with a prank phone call, you can destroy time. Can absolutely have a negative cascade causality effect by saying the wrong thing or implanting erroneous information into a person's mind in the past. You can sabotage an individual person by saying like, hey, whatever you do, don't buy that, let's think of this like Amazon stock. When the company was just Apple computer stock, when the company's just starting out in the 1980s. What if you called someone telepathically in the 1980s and you were like, yeah, Apple computer, it's going nowhere. Save your money. Don't bother to invest in that company. And then if they had invested back then, clearly they would be a millionaire at this point, many decades later. That's just one example, because you can sabotage someone. But what also I've talked about, like the big lighter phenomenon, what if you went to a simplified nature-based society with a small piece of technology and they weren't prepared for it and they saw you, light your cigarette with a lighter, automated lighter, and they'd be like, fire lives in the little box and you can make a fire anytime you want, and they'd be unduly impressed. And you could have a huge impact on how their culture is shaped even without giving them the artifact, just seeing it. This is the concept also of UFOs. I refuse to update. P.S. I'm aware that they are calling them UAPs now. That's like the cool new term. I'm like, no, I'm still calling them UFOs. All right. So, but UFOs, the type of technology and the type of maneuvers that are evident in their flight paths without even giving that technology to human observers, seeing that evidence of technology changes your viewpoint. You're like, 90-degree angles in flight with, like no G-force problems, like something magical is going on. I don't know all about it, but I'm seeing it with my senses. So something has got to be happening here. It changes the fabric of reality to be exposed to technology as a nascent consciousness or organization or level of culture. So a big part of responsibility in using the time phone is not influencing consciousnesses of the past in a harmful way. You have to be super selective as a master and as a virtuoso to send the correct signals to the past so that you improve time instead of screwing things up. And now I can be extra silly and I can reference, I've talked about this before, Homer Simpson's time toaster from the Treehouse of Horror, classic episode where Homer Simpson, cartoon character, makes like a magical toaster that's part time machine and part, like bread cooker. And every time he makes a slice of toast, it rearranges reality. It's based upon the very well written science fiction short story called A Distant Sound of Thunder. That is from Ray Bradbury. I would say read the original, then see the cartoon. They're all silly. I mean, cartoons are a waste of time, but I refer to it for your pop culture consideration because I'm aware of it. I don't know a lot of pop culture, but I know that one. But in the Ray Bradbury story, they go on a time safari. All right. It's like, sign up for your time safari here, pay some money, and we'll take you back in time, a la H.G. Wells' Time Machine. But whatever you do, don't step off the path. You must stay on this walkway don't step off the path, because if you do, something bad can happen. So they all go back there. They don't shoot anything on Time Safari. They only take pictures. They're just there for sightseeing. And then the guy gets back to the future. And he's like, yeah, sure, it's great to hear about, whatever, President Bush that just got elected. And they're all looking at him like, what? What are you talking about? No, like President Smith has been elected. He's like, I never heard of President Smith. What is going on? And starts to realize that he did something when he went back in time to change the entire reality. He looks on the bottom of his shoe and he had squashed an insect. I think it was like a butterfly. He peels the squashed insect off the bottom of his shoe and he holds it up and he's like, uh-oh, guys, I did something very naughty and very wrong. That is what we're talking about. That when you are beginning to look at the interconnectivity of the tapestry of time and causality effects, a little thing that you do in the past can have a giant telescoping effect moving forward into the future, and can have a very harmful and destabilizing effect if you don't know what the F you're doing and if you make a lot of mistakes. So I've talked also about like the naughty creatures that lived on Mars and their very crap time machine and what they did and how that has destabilized ancient concurrent Atlantis and led to the present difficulties that you really face right now. They don't know what the F they're doing with time. And that's very bad. And you know something, it's easy to mess stuff up. Think about that. Think about like how much expertise it takes to create a beautiful garden or an ecosystem. Very well thought out. And you have to think about the watering schedule and the lights and the nutrients and all these things. But it takes almost nothing to kill the garden. Like if you want to kill your garden, just put some stupid person in charge of it that knows nothing about light and knows nothing about water and knows nothing about maintaining these delicate balances. And you come back in a month and everything died because it's like these guys got overwatered, these guys got underwatered, no one got what they needed, everything went kaput. So very easy to destroy time. Time is a delicate balance. And it is vulnerable. Time is an alive creature. And I think that it's very erroneous and flawed in the self-centeredness of humans to say, well, time is so enormous and its scale is so large and its complexity is so profound. It's so much bigger than me. Clearly, it's indestructible. That's my SpongeBob face. That is not true. It's like saying, like, look at the ocean. When people stand on the shore of the ocean, they're like, I'm little, the ocean is big. I can dump a lot of stuff into the ocean and it's not going to affect the ocean at all. And humans have been stress testing that proposal for a long time. You found out it's not true because at a certain point, the ocean is full of garbage because you put a lot of garbage in there. And it's not like because the ocean is so big, it goes bye-bye. It just means you have a very diluted pool of garbage, but still garbage. It's not okay. So I hope that the theme that I'm getting across is to you is immaturity, like the folly of immaturity. But when you make a mess in time, you are making a mess on a grandly, exponentially magnified level. And in your immaturity, you might not recognize how big of a problem you're making. That's every kid that's ever whatever colored on the couch with crayons. They have no idea what a bad problem they are making. And then your mom comes along and is like, you just ruined the couch, like stupid kid. And you're like, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't do it. Batman did it. Like, like you're a little kid. But that's Homer Simpson with his time toaster. That's humans with time. That's also a lot of the very, very benighted supposed scientists who are doing things in your time right now with large hadron colliders like what's going on at CERN. So they were crazy and insane and imbalanced when they did that on Mars and made their planet go kablooey and tried to invade your planet. And now they're crazy in this level of reality too. They're like, I don't know, I'll make a giant time toaster. That will clearly fix everything. It's like, no, it doesn't fix everything. And in many ways, makes it even worse. Okay. So all of those cautionary tales aside, now speak in positives, because I am here doing expert time toastering. I am actually from not the future, but a place space outside of time. And in my connectivity into this moment now, and for the past over 20 years in being part of your community, I have very intentionally planted seeds. So not only have I not been destroying the garden, I've been like, you know what? I am here to improve this garden. And I know exactly what type of seeds need to be planted, where and when, in order for those plants to eventually flower and fruit and make their beautiful tomatoes or cucumbers over here at this point. So I'm doing all this very, very intentionally. I want you to know that. Sometimes, like when I do a presentation during class, you might really see me stop, think, and measure my words. And it's all because of that. I'm like, okay, I need to get this across because I need to get this done over here so that that way, this many years down the road, those concepts that I have made available to humanity way back in 2024 then come to fruition as your mind gestates them and it affects your behavior. It's a big position of responsibility, and I take it very seriously. And that's why I'm also in gratitude always when you guys are great students and you listen to my class and you listen to my lectures, because it gives an opportunity for this information to actually rectify the time field. You are like making yourself available to the new corrective information streams that are coming in so that that way you can avoid disaster and peril and have a really great life experience. So Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a way to reconnect to your higher faculties that you have been artificially disconnected from for the definition of what is called all of human history. Before human history, what you presently have, which goes back roughly 5 or 10,000 years, which is not a very long amount of time, even though it might sound like a long amount of time, like the ocean is so big, but it's not that big. It's actually bigger than that. Before what is known as recorded human history, your whole way of comprehending the world, communicating to others about the world, and affecting the world was different. And you are also totally connected to all time everywhere and all consciousness everywhere. So you not only got, I want to say smacked down, but I don't want you to feel like you've been, punished, but you definitely got diminished and knocked off of your pedestal in coming into the world of mortality. But also, it's not just that you got a story about being mortal and vulnerable, and also that you were diminished in your divine connection. You were also quarantined or diminished in your connectivity to the rest of consciousness, which is also you, but moving at vastly different rates and coming from very different directions. But that is all self, and that is your true identity. All that out there. And all that out there includes like the sun and the stars and photons of pure light and non-anthropomorphic consciousness. And it has been very difficult for you as humans to do all the things that you're supposed to do as part of the ideal nature of your existence, like in a flow state and connected to all time everywhere, because of these genetic mutilations, obstacles, and blockages. All right. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a way to get past those blockages, to be able to return to and reconnect to your innate gifts at having higher faculties. So the higher faculties have been either dormant or cut off from you, or you haven't had enough gas in your car to make that beautiful, amazing, like a sports car, go very fast and do what you want it to do. And so a lot of people have been feeling diminished, like, I have this amazing, whatever, red Corvette in the garage, and it's just sitting there. It's not going anywhere and doesn't do anything. A lot of people think like, there must be something wrong with me. Like, I guess I just don't know how to drive a car. I just don't know what I'm doing. And the car just sits there. I'm like, no, the car needs gas. And the gas is the tone of unconditional love. And almost everything about human miscultivation, the implants in your DNA and the ways in which your consciousness has been diminished, has been to take humans away from that love tone, to siphon the gas out of your car so that you can't go places and do stuff. And that keeps you stuck there. And then in your ignorance, you're like, well, I'm stuck here. I must have done something wrong. Maybe I'm being punished. And I'm like, nope, you're not being punished. You're actually good people. Nope, none of this is fair. And actually, here's how you get your car on the road again, through Flying Rainbow Lasagna. This is how you get past the genetic blockages, and it becomes possible for you to get enough gas, enough love tone, enough of this frictionless mental energy to be able to activate your higher viewpoint. So when you activate your higher viewpoint, at first, the stage is anthropomorphic seeing. And it's not a bad stage, it's just incomplete. So it's not only might you find yourself in a three-dimensional reality space talking to a creature, but you might have insights that are deep knowings beyond words about people on the human level. Like if someone is lying to you, you might have just a deep knowing, like that guy's a liar. That's it. Like you just might look at a picture of someone. You might not know anything about them or see them walking down the street, but you just look at them and your force field of truth around your head just says, don't trust that guy. He's a liar. But if you said that to someone, and I've had this experience a lot, like if I say things on, the social media platform that used to be known as Twitter, if I go on there and I'm like, oh, blah, 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 and I say this thing that I know from pure insight, there's always some nonsense, silly person that comes along and is like, oh, yeah, where's the scientific white paper about that? Show me the proof. Like, I don't have proof. Like, this is my insight. I don't pretend to be a scientist in any way. I'm just telling you what I see. I'm like Yogi Berra. I calls them like I sees them. But some people are like, no, I'm wedded to the intellect and I require a extensive white paper. Otherwise, I invalidate you. And I'm like, that's not fair to be that way. They're acting at it from a different level. So when you have deep knowing, you might know something about other people, but that knowledge about other people might be totally socially inappropriate. Mostly I get pushback when I share these things because the things that I see are totally inappropriate. And they might even be about someone who's like a public figure or someone who is well known in society being demonically possessed or not in control of their own mind or inhabited by something that is very unsavory and dangerous. And I'm like, oh yeah, like that guy's not a guy. He's an inhabited husk of something dangerous. And people are gonna be like, how do you know? Like my insight. That's how I know. Because at its heart, at the basis, this insight, this human-centered knowing exists to keep you safe. Like if somebody is a psychopathic, bloodthirsty murderer, liar, and your protective psychic force field touches upon them, your alarm bells are going to go off. They're going to be like, warning, warning, this person is dangerous to be around, and you have to believe it. So I just want each one of you to begin to calibrate to and validate to your own sense of deep knowing. And I'll get to your questions or comments in the chat very soon, I promise. It is beyond the intellect, and I will never ask you for a scientific white paper to prove your assertions. If you're like, this is sometimes people share with me, like, something, like, I think that guy over there is a psychopathic liar. Something, I think you're right. And that's it. Because I recognize that there have been a lot of times in human history when there have been baseless accusations and things that are done out of what is the word superstition. Like many different times of mania, the Spanish Inquisition, Salem witch hunts, many times of persecution and genocide. And people were just like, yep, I know who's guilty. That convenient scapegoat group over there. They're all guilty. Let's get them now. And of course, we don't want to devolve into scapegoating, mania, whatever, any of these times, this French Revolution, what's it called? When the culture just gets out of control, and that seems to happen on a cyclical nature with imbalanced humans. So of course, rationalism helps because if someone is like, I propose that person is a witch and we should burn them at the stake, scientific rationalism is like, wait, do you have evidence? Like, do you have a white paper about this? And everyone's gonna be like, grumble, grumble, grumble. Like, no, I didn't have any evidence about it, but I just know it on a deep level. Like, give me the torch. So like, no, sorry, you're not allowed to burn people alive. You need some evidence for that. Like that's a positive improvement, right? From just like baseless accusations. But so I do not propose, of course, that you become violent towards anybody else based upon your deep knowing. But I do propose and encourage you to be totally validating of your own inner knowledge and to use it to protect yourself. Because you do not always have to be aggressive towards someone that you perceive as being dangerous or unhealthy or a liar. Sometimes you simply need to protect yourself from interaction with them or have minimized interactions with them. Or here's another big one, to disbelieve them. Like if someone is a politician or an elected official and you just have a deep knowing, you're like, my viewpoint through this level of pure insight on a human level just tells me that that guy is a piece of shit, and I don't think that they're telling the truth. And then the next part of that is, so I don't believe in them. That's it. And that's totally your cosmic right to be that way. It can even be something that saves your life in a different way. Maybe it's not a corrupt politician. Maybe it's a medical professional. And maybe the medical professional is innocently erroneous, or maybe they're bought out by big pharma or whatever it is, but maybe they're telling you, look, you patient, you better take this medicine right over here, otherwise you're going to die, die, die. And inside of your mind, you're like, you know something? I don't trust this doctor. I don't think they're telling the truth. I'm not going to believe what they're telling to me. And then, of course, you research it and you find out that they were wrong, and you're glad that you didn't take their medical advice, and you actually saved your own life by listening to your inner knowing. And I think I've shared with you also about your inner knowing literally leading away from the membrane of death. This goes anecdote from a friend of mine from way back in Woodstock. Years ago, Woodstock was like a hippie type of place, and people hitchhiked around. It was a normal way of getting places. So this is my friend when she must have been like in her late teens or early 20s, but she was hitchhiking around, and she was at this particular truck stop, and the guy's like, oh yeah, like I'll take you to blah blah place where you need to go. And she was in the bathroom washing her hands, and she had deep knowing up here. She was like, if I get in that guy's car, I'm going to end up dead in a dumpster. She knew it on such a profound level that she literally would not even walk back out through the main restaurant. She said she jumped out through a window because she didn't want to have to confront the guy, ran away, did everything she could to get away from there. She saved her own life by navigating away from the membrane of death, navigating away from the erroneous choices that she would have made without that deep knowing. So when that deep knowing happens for you, listen to it, because it can really save your life. And sometimes deep knowing can bring you into alignment with something that is an amazing, positive future. Like maybe you're like, something, maybe this is you, like whatever, 40 years ago, maybe you're like, something, I don't know why, but I just really think that this concept of Bitcoin is really going to go somewhere. I think I'm going to, buy some Bitcoin and just hang on to it for a while. And then now your Bitcoin is worth millions of dollars because you're like, I listened to my deep intuition and I did the right thing. So this is big. Your deep intuition, as it comes to you on the anthropomorphic level, is a direct translation of the conversations that you are having with divinity about your flight through time. And it is appropriate to experience those conversations on the anthropomorphic level because you are human, but it is most appropriate to experience that navigation on the level of pure abstraction, which is what my paintings look like. This is abstraction, not representational. Abstract, abstract, abstract. This one's a little representational because there's some pictures of stuff that's in there, but mostly my paintings are abstract. And they represent what my viewpoint is like when I am going through my life and when I am doing the dance called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, because this is not an intellectual proposal. You do not navigate through this on an anthropomorphic level. You do not do things based upon your human viewpoint, but you do things based upon the empirical divine perfection of mathematics. And that's important because you don't argue the lasagna. No one's going to come along and be like, you better write an expository essay about why you danced the lasagna in that way. Like, why did you connect these different reality structures? And why did you take a scoop from there and then take a scoop from there and genetic influence from there and from there? Like, why did you do all these things? Describe it in words and tell it to my human mind. And the answer is you can't do that, because you were following the mandates of the larger cosmic infrastructure in touching on and making the exact correct time patterns and touching on the correct things, conduits in time to connect them from one place to another. None of this is done on the anthropomorphic level. None of this is done where you're like, yeah, see a person, like, and I'm going to like touch a person, like hold their hand or move them around or something like that. No, like all that you're seeing are abstracts, kind of like bundles or timelines. Or if you can envision how in telecommunications, in the beginning of the telephone industry, there was the operator who had like a big giant switchboard with many different plugs, and you would talk to them and you would say, hi, this is, Joe Smith, and I'd like to speak to, Susie at Mockingbird Lane. Please connect me. And the human being would be like, okay, great. I'm connecting you. Here's your plug going into here. Like that level of directness and abstraction. That is what is happening on this level of pure insight, not on the anthropomorphic level. You're just looking at the switchboard of reality. Or to use another movie reference, when people talk about that movie, The Matrix, at a certain point, he sees just like this green script that is running, that is the abstraction that represents what are events in reality. But I don't see it as green ones and zeros, as that's very, very boring. My shoulders go down. That's so boring. No, my shoulders go up. It looks beautiful. It looks dynamic. So it is, like flowering and moving and shifting and tying itself up in different interesting ways. And it's colorful and it has meaning. And the meaning does not require a translation. The translation would be like, if you imagine that you're looking at a diagram that is labeled, and then you look at a diagram like this and it is labeled, it's like, here you find the singularity, and here you find the membrane of death, and here you find this. Like, you will never have a little narrator that tells you what are the different things. When you look at the shape, you comprehend from the totality of the shape everything all at once. So it's not even like a linear exploration of what is truth, because you're also used to that from your cultural imperatives of being literate. Literate is linear in your way of comprehending language, because you have like first this sentence, then this sentence, then this sentence, like it goes in order, and word order matters. So this is different. I don't speak languages other than English. My spelling is not that good in English, but I'm dimly aware of other languages that are a little bit different. That would be something that's like the hieroglyphics of the ancient Maya world, or the pictoglyph languages of Japan, China, and Korea. Their whole structure and sentence structure is very different than English language, okay? So you're not necessarily going to get a breakdown of the information when you have a flash of insight into a linear proposal that says, first, this is true, then proposal number 2, then information number 3, and then conclusion number 4. You get it all at once. Like when you take a bite of pie or cake, you don't first taste the flour, and then you taste the pumpkin, and then you taste the sugar, and then you taste the spices. No, you taste all at once. You taste it all at once. So this is a sense. That is a new type of sense that is your higher sense. All right. Now, and you can ask questions if you want to, because I'm sure people have questions about themselves mostly, but what are the different types of higher senses? So I was talking a little bit about far speak, and the ability to either focus your mind to talk to one person, or make your mind like a garden hose and talk to many people. And there's also the ability, like I said, to talk to the past, or to talk to the future, or to talk to places that are far distant. Your light body, when it awakens, and your higher senses, when you experience them, have some aspects of information that have analogs, direct analogs in the realm of the 5 senses. So your 5 senses being your eyesight, your hearing, your smell, taste, and your touch, right? But then there are impressions and information that come to you from your higher dimensional insight that have no analogs in what your body can do and perceive. And so like one of my gifts is this calculative power and ability to sense patterns and generate patterns. And we don't really have in our 5 sense world a sense that is called your pattern. But in the higher dimensional world, I definitely have a sense that is my pattern sense. Okay. And so when I'm doing flying rainbow lasagna and I'm navigating in these highest dimensional realities, it does not look to me like when I'm driving my car here in the world that I'm in with you with computers. Like I just took me and my dog to the store this morning so we could get important foods. And I drove my car on the road, and it was a linear road. And we went through a linear experience, and we came home with the groceries. But my comprehension of where the store is like, here's my house. And then through a route, point A to point B, I end up at the store. And then, of course, find my way back. But that is not how I navigate in higher dimensional space at all. I want you to know that, because a lot of people start to do remote viewing and other projects like that, and they are doing it very much from the presumed viewpoints presumptions of reality that have to do with your physical embodiment experience. And they treat it as if it is a linear proposal. Like, I want to remote view the moon, so I will send my mind to the moon like I'm driving my car to the moon. But it doesn't work that way. Actually, that is a very flawed and inadequate presumption that you are then projecting upon a world of light body senses that experiences time and space very, very differently. So when I do my lasagna, I almost have like a giant energy bubble that's all around me that can be hundreds of miles big, right? And I sense all the stuff that is happening within that energy bubble. And then I do all of these complex patternings and responses to the patterns that I feel in the energy bubble all at once. So it's very different than driving point A to point B or doing something in a linear sense with time. When you work on time and improving time, it's a project where you have to work on it all at once because it changes and shifts. So if what you were going to do is like, say your time is like your painting and you're like, okay, this painting doesn't look that great. I'm just going to work on this little corner over here. I'm just going to work on this, whatever, bowl of fruit. And I'm not going to work on any of the other aspects of the painting. But as you shift and you're trying to make the bowl of fruit look perfect, it shifts everything else in the painting. Everything else changes. So every time you paint that apple and make it look better, or that whatever watermelon in the bowl of fruit, it's changing all this stuff that's in the background. It's changing all this stuff that's over here. It changes all of it. So there is not a way to just choose a discrete aspect of time and just work on that. You're working on everything because it's all tied together. And this is deep truth also from what you're experiencing in the planetary levels of development regarding your ascension right now. It's why I say you can't have a small amount of slavery or a small amount of diminished freedom in the world and then everything else is fine. Like, why am I here in this world? Because this place was about to go down the toilet, definitely imperiled in terms of being enslaved and already heavily enslaved. And you can't have that because that is also affecting the entire painting of time because your consciousness is supposed to flow and you're part of a continuum. And if you're stuck in a little prison over here, it means that some of you were supposed to go over here and you didn't. And some of you were supposed to fly over here and you didn't. And some stuff is stuck over here for millions of years that shouldn't be stuck over here. And it's jamming up the works of the entire flow of time. The crimes committed here in this planet or on this world are huge. Even if it was just this, what if someone was just like, look, I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to distract you for 5 minutes. You know, like, hey, sir, may I please have a moment of your time? And then I get into a nonsense conversation with you for 5 minutes. And like, okay, 5 minutes is done. Go back to your regular, you're free to go. Go on with your day. But that could have been a crucial 5 minutes. I could have screwed up that whole guy's entire life through wasting that 5 minutes of his time. It's how important time is. You know, when you play with a band, being 5 minutes late for like your part in a song is really, really late. Like being 1 second late is really, really late. If you're the drummer in the band and you're 1 second late, everyone is like, hello, like, this sounds terrible. You can't do this. What if you're 5 minutes late in your drum beat? That's like you ruin the song or singing a particular note or something like that. 5 minutes can be everything. And I, again, don't want you to be like frozen or rocking back and forth, being like, okay, must be perfect, must be perfect. Like, it's a lot, it's a tall order. But that is what you're awakening your higher senses to do, to be masters of time. What is it to be an ascended master? And why has this planet been diminished from communication with the outside world for so long? And then what is the significance of reconnecting to that outside world? The outside world not only being where I exist as Aurora outside of time space, but also the connectivity of cultures that are relevant to you, either in your distant past or will be who you are in the future. Because one of the challenges with humans at being able to interact with otherworldly creatures is the only way I can say it. Instead of saying extraterrestrials that live on a far distant star system or extra dimensionals that live in another multidimensional realm, they're otherworldly creatures that actually, spoiler alert, is it's all you. But I don't want you to erroneously do your new age bypassing shadow work and be like, I hug everyone. It's all me. Kumbaya. And then singing and hugging. It's like, no, because you know what's happening? You're on an evolutionary journey of consciousness. So, of course, you know that light speed is pretty slow. And if you have a star over here and then a star over here, that the time that it takes for a signal to go from one star to another can be billions of years. It can be a very, very long amount of time. By the time that star A sends out a message and it's like, hi guys, how you doing? And it reaches these guys over here. These guys are dead. They're kaput. The star has already become a black hole. And these guys over here are like, oh, good, we're getting this message that happens to be from deep antiquity, from our ancient past. Those guys don't even exist anymore. The whole entire levels of communication in a linear speed of light paradigm become so impractical that you almost can't have a conversation. But that doesn't mean that these conversations don't happen. They do happen through hyperspace. We talked about hyperspace last week when you were afraid of math and afraid of physics, but then you found out that it could be fun. And I told you all about hyperspace. Hyperspace is totally fun and cool. Hyperspace is the higher dimensional space that we fold the leaf of time so that the little ant does not have to go all the way over to dinner in order to experience a bite of dinner. We fold the fabric of space-time closer so that breakfast and dinner are in the same place, and that is using hyperspace. In order to go from this shape to this shape, we move this shape in hyperspace and create the flying rainbow lasagna reality. So hyperspace is the next highest level of dimensionality. And every time you add an additional dimension, you add an additional degree of freedom. That's math talk. And that means that every time you add an additional dimension, there's more stuff that you can do. So if you were a car driving on the road in a race against another car, you're both limited by like, here's a car and here's another car. Driving on the road, you're both limited. And then if there's an obstacle here, you're both like, press the brakes, can't go any further. But what if this guy over here can turn into a helicopter? This guy's stuck on the ground, but this guy can turn into a helicopter. So here you are, this guy's gonna have to go across in a linear sense, but he gets stuck here. But this guy jumps off the surface of time and flies over the obstacle and flies to the destination. So the non-linear experience of time is a direct result of the increased levels of freedom of perception and movement that happen as a result of occupying a higher dimension or comprehending what is hyperspace, is the room that contains the room or the space that contains space. And when you are able to go into hyperspace, you can communicate with things that would have been far away as if there's no space. So your sun is like 93 million miles away. But when you do the flying rainbow lasagna, you're actually folding time and space that the sun is not far away. It is actually right here with you. You and the sun overlap and are in the same space. And what if you have a culture from 10 million, billion, gazillion years ago? And you're like, they're not here now. They were here a long time ago. If you can fold the fabric of space-time in hyperspace, you can talk with them as if they are overlapping with your reality. And that's a very, very big deal, because not only can you have a positive impact on them, but they can have a positive impact on you. Because I can hear some of your minds, and some of you are like, why do I want to talk to those Stone Age Neanderthals? And the truth is, they were pretty advanced. They were pretty amazing. And you can learn a lot from them. So there's the caution that, of course, what would happen if you, as a technologically more advanced civilization, influenced a technologically more primitive civilization? You'd have to be very, very selective about what you did to not screw up time. But what if you have a very primitive civilization that's you in the future, and you connect with the deep antiquity, masters of the past that actually had a lot of knowledge and were not knuckle-dragging idiots, and you can learn a lot from them? That would be really profound. We're talking about secrets and information that was suppressed and stolen, like stuff that was burned in the Library of Alexandria, ancient esoteric wisdom, and things that people knew a long time ago that have been diminished or weeded out of your present viewpoint. So you have a huge amount to learn from your own planetary cultural history. And then also, what if you could talk with a galactic civilization that is from deep antiquity, and it would take you a very long time to fly there in a Clank-like spaceship or to communicate with them through the speed of light? But what if you could talk to them as if they are now, and learn from them, and they can learn from you. And that is a huge benefit to both species, and everybody grows and evolves when it's done in the right way. But because of the limitations that have happened and distortions at the level of yellow with your false implant that is known as your human mind, because we talk about that in the, teaching about your mind is not your own. So don't hit yourself in the head with a hammer. Don't be like that guy in the movie Pi and drill into your skull with like, a drill for trephination because you have whatever crazy things in your mind you want to let out. Don't do that. So please don't hurt yourself. But yes, you have a lot of things that are limiting your unencumbered viewpoint and unencumbered flight through time, and that can be destabilizing to other civilizations. There's a genuine concern in reducing connectivity of this planet and of who you are to other places that might be cleaner than this place. But also, I don't want you to internalize it and be like, my car is stuck in the driveway. I must have done something very wrong that they took away my car keys. That's been the lie that's been told to you for a long time. When they say like your planet is under quarantine because you guys are all bad, wrong, and naughty, and stay in your room and think about what you've done. And that's not actually what happened. What actually happened was you guys are innocent. You got victimized in a bad way, and now have a lot of distortions in running a lot of distorted software and thought patterns. But others have had to protect themselves from being exposed to those distortions so that they don't get destabilized. But it doesn't mean that you're bad, wrong, or evil, or that you deserve to be thrown down the cosmic toilet. It means that you should have those distortions removed and you should be restored, which is the rectification for being here. And of course, I spoke about last week, energy and entropy. Not everything has the same destination. Some of you remove the distortions and return to light speed plus and pure energy. And some of the people that are here, but not you in this class, but some of the organisms, organizations, and personality characteristics shall not be joining us at the bullet train of infinity at light speed and beyond. They will go to entropy, non-being. So as we are working through this refinery process and refining out the continued consciousness that continues to, move through time and have longevity and coherence versus the consciousness that devolves and peters out or is diluted and does not have staying power and cannot exist anymore, you are then able to gain your reconnection to the rest of the cosmic infrastructure. And so I started with this class, way back in 2012, and the world was different here in 2012. And even within the past 10 years or so, or 12 years, a huge amount of evolution has happened in you guys individually and as a collective, that now the connectivity is being restored, and it should be fully restored. It is really your birthright, and it is part of what it is to be a galactic citizen. But in being a galactic citizen, it also means that you must take total responsibility for what your mind is doing, for what your tendril of attention is being placed upon, and for what you're energizing. Because that's another big thing. Although the tendril of attention, I'm being allegorical when I talk about this, but it's very much a two-way sensory organ. When I send my tendril of attention to something, I touch on that thing. I get energy from that thing. What if it's a butterfly? Then I get beautiful butterfly energy comes into my mind, the tendril of attention. But also, I give energy to the butterfly. It is bidirectional. And what if you touch on a pile of doo-doo? Then it means that you are getting small amounts of doo-doo inside of you into your mind. What if the doo-doo is dark stuff? Like stuff about, euphemistically, it is called human trafficking, sexual exploitation, different forms of violence and corruption, drug abuse, substance abuse, dirtiness, demonic contracts, all that really gross scum layer that's going on in your world right now. Being aware of that scum layer is important, but every time you touch on it, getting a little bit of that inside of you, just like when you smell poops, you are ingesting tiny fragments of poop as a way that you can stimulate your nose and tell that something is rotten and you don't want to be near it, but you don't want to over ingest. The whole point of having an olfactory sense is so that you can ingest a few molecules of poop and be like, oh, that smells terrible. I'm going to go away from it now. You got it? You should not be like, wow, that smells terrible. Let me delve even deeper. Have you ever had a roommate that smells like the milk has gone bad and smells and is like, this smells terrible. Here, smell this, and like puts it directly under your nose. Like that's the opposite of what that roommate should do. They should be like, oh, this smells terrible. Let me take it away from all of us and safely dispose of it over here so that none of us will have to smell it further. So this really relates to ongoing cultural transformations in this culturally transformative moment. You really do have an opportunity to clean house from corrupt government, corrupt religion, corrupt media. And that includes like entertainment, movies, music, and some of these celebrities and figures that you know all about. There's lots of stuff. If you want to put your tendril of attention on like a sewer of filth, you can watch a lot of videos and read a lot of articles right now, stuff that are about people's white parties and Lolita Islands and all of those things. I want you to know about that stuff, but I want you to only ingest the minimal amounts of molecules of poop so that you know that it's gross, and then don't delve any deeper than you need. All right, got it? So for people who are direct researchers, like it can actually be very friction filled to be exposed to so much profound evil and to smell so much doo-doos. Like if you're a plumber, like let's say research investigative journalists who are looking into those topics, they're like plumbers. They need to wear a Tyvek suit. They need to wear coveralls and some kind of breathing apparatus and something so they don't get all that dirty, gross stuff inside of them and in their pores and under their fingernails just from learning about that stuff. This is really important. It's not as reductionist as the aphorism, energy flows where attention goes. It's a little bit simplistic, but it is truthful that you are marinating in and ingesting the things that you place your attention upon. So if we go back to you being in class, like as a little tiny child, and you're like daydreaming out the window and you're looking at like trees and birds, you're placing your attention on nature. It's actually very positive and good. And then your teacher claps her hands and says, ahem, ahem, attention, please. Please place your attention, pay attention to what I'm drawing here on the blackboard. And maybe I'm saying something boring about history or math or whatever. And then you are asked to ingest this stuff instead of that stuff. That really recontextualizes this, not as being a child who's lazy or can't focus or has a mental difficulty that you should solve with a pharmaceutical prescription pill. None of those things are truthful. What is truthful is you're placing your attention on a life-affirming natural structure that's like the sun, the trees, the playground outside, and being asked to ingest and energize instead an artificial structure. That is this construct of history or math or whatever it is that you're being asked to focus on. It's totally redefining what boredom is. Boredom is like finding when you put your attention on something, it is non-nutritive. When you are bored, your body is telling you like there are no more nutrients. Like when a plant is in a container and the roots grow to the edge of the container, and then it's like, okay, there's no more nutrients here. Like I need to go further and do something more. Like boredom is a sacred sensor inside of you that tells you when you need to get more nutrients. And you should not continue to pay attention to something that makes you very bored. And you're like, Aurora, if I did that, like no one would ever graduate and no one would have a job. I'm like, I know this is part of what I'm here to recalibrate. There's a lot of problems in your world. But no, ideally, you should never be bored. And when children are, when anyone is in control of their own education and their own self-cultivation, they do not bore themselves. They do things that they find innately interesting. Like for me, someone tells me, here's a cool science fiction book. And I start to read it and I give it a chance. I read a couple of chapters. And if I'm bored, I'm like, I will not go further. I'm not going to put my attention on this book that I find boring. There's no nutrients in it for me. But when you are committed to like a university level program, people do things that are boring all the time because they're like, I need to do this for my diploma. And when people work, they're like, I don't want to read this spreadsheet, but I have to because it's part of my job and I want to get paid. from my work. So in many ways, the process of education is also a desensitization of people's attention, getting them to learn to focus on things that are not satisfying and that are inherently boring. And so it's, again, what I'm teaching you, hopefully the things are all coming together, the themes of these things. When you honor your insight, you honor deep knowing about people, things that you just know that you are not rational. And you also honor your own inner promptings about what your attention wants to do, about what you find interesting, about what you find fulfilling with your mind. Because when you do this complex patterning of connecting through the time phone to various different personalities or creatures across time, you're not supposed to do it randomly. And you're not supposed to be like, of course, pranking someone, but not also doing something that is just completely boring and unfulfilling. You're probably used to doing a lot of boring conversations in this world that you're in, but that is not what you're supposed to do with your beautiful insight and your beautiful mind, your true mind. So your true mind, you should think of it as one of these amazing telescopes, like one of these, like a Hubble telescope or something like that. All the scientists that are in academia wish that they had their own telescope, but they can't afford it. So what they do is they book time on these expensive telescopes, and it's only for authorized personnel and only for people that have a really great motivation for wanting to use the apparatus. And then when you book time on the telescope, maybe it's like, okay, great. You will have between 3:15 a.m. to 6:45 a.m. on this particular day. And then that's your window. You're going to have to look at everything you want to look at in that window. So have your coordinates ready. You want to be like, okay, great. I want to check out this star over here. And then I want to look at this star over here. I want to look at this star over here. And you make the best use you can of that window. Your higher senses and your attention is very similar in that you have a window of availability. You have a certain amount of gas that's in your car, and then you have an opportunity to be able to focus your telescope on the things, concepts, and life events that you find are really important. And so it'll come back. I had a fine point that I wanted to share there, but you want to focus on the most important things, not on something stupid. Like it would be very, very wasteful to use your time on the cosmic telescope to watch an episode of The Simpsons. It's like, you can do that anytime. It's on YouTube. Don't use your magical once in a lifetime opportunity to look at something that is very secular, mundane, and unimpressive. You want to use your higher faculties to access information that would be otherwise inaccessible, and to look at the things, to prioritize the things that are the most salient and profound and transformative for you in your life, like things that will help you redefine your existence, become immortal, become empowered, things that will be good, energetic investments. So I'm changing my metaphor here from being a scientist booking time on a telescope, because scientists are often just involved in research and they just want to know stuff. But now I want to talk about being like a small business owner. I'm a small business owner. I have many, many businesses. So I've done this in many different contexts. When you're a small business owner, like let's say you make broccoli sprouts. I've been so busy lately, I've not even had time to grow my broccoli. But when you do a business like that or making pies, you have to have your basic ingredients. Like you have to buy seeds or buy blueberries and buy flour. And then you have to have pie pans or dehydrators and infrastructure. And then once you make your product and you sell enough of your product, then you get profit, but you can't just be like, hooray, I just made $10 worth of profits. Now I will go spend $10 and have everything that I want from that. It's like, nope, you got to take that $10 and you got to use that to be able to buy more equipment to get your business going and to keep your business going. You have to reinvest the profits into your original investment until you get to the point where you are so profitable that you can spend the profits. And that is what your eye of insight is really like. You need to get critical information through your attention, through activating your higher senses. The information should not be arbitrary. It should be spending your hard-earned love tone energy on the most critical concepts that will give you more equipment and more infrastructure to keep going. You are building your infrastructure, and your infrastructure is not pie pans or food dehydrators, but it is thought forms. So when I talk about jumping out of reality and getting to the store and getting fresh groceries, I'm talking about getting fresh ideas. When I paint my paintings, these are made out of ideas and groceries that I got from connecting through my higher faculties and using my attention and literally placing my attention on the sun and the stars. My curriculum that is about the path of light is a perfect example. I literally placed my tendril of attention on the stars in the night sky and got all of these ideas. And all of the ideas were abstractions that then I had to translate into something that would be somewhere, my thing beeps after an hour and a half, comprehensible and accessible to you as humans. So that is my job as a visionary artist. It's my job as a painter when I look at the mountaintop to make a faithful reproduction of what the mountain looks like. And when I get information from the sun and the stars, it comes as the taste all at once. Boom, here's all this information. And it's like, wow, it knocks your socks off. And then that's a flash of insight. And then this is me. I'm like, wow, that was really deep and profound. I comprehend this. How in the world am I going to explain this to everyone else? That is the real challenge, because these things make sense to me through my insight in an abstract sense that is nonverbal. But to communicate it to other people, I have to translate it into something that is accessible to you. And I've talked a little bit about my journey as an artist and even my journey becoming articulate about these concepts. Because when I first came here, I had all of these deep concepts and insights, and I have lots and lots of notebooks that I drew them as diagrams. But when I would show them to people, people would just be like, oh, like, that's a pretty design, or that's an interesting line drawing. Like they had no idea what I was actually sharing, because I'm used to the world where you just create an image and then the image just speaks, and you don't have to actually say, like, this is yellow and this is a circle and this is a convergence point. Like you don't have to narrate the whole thing. So I would show it to people and they'd be like, yeah, like that's cool. And I'd be like, this is me, like, I'm not okay. They didn't get anything about what I was trying to share with them about this. I'm going to harumph. I'm going to have to try harder. And I learned that in order for people to really put their attention on an object and look at it from a deeper level of interpretation, you got to put that sucker in a frame. That's why I became a custom framer, because I was an artist, but I learned, like, if you just have something written on a cocktail napkin or a casual piece of notebook paper, people will overlook it. But if you put it in a big, giant gilded frame, the frame is a symbol in your culture to say, look at the stuff that is inside of this square or rectangle. This is important stuff. And when people look at the stuff that's important inside of the frame, then they interpret it. They're like, what, this part is green for a reason, and this part is this for a reason, and what is the reason? And they start to look into those things. So I learned that I had to do that either with a frame or a sculpture pedestal, because if you just put a lasagna like in the middle of the road, I would show it to people. Sometimes people would think, again, they were like, is that a lampshade? I'm like, no, it's not a lampshade. And then some people thought, like, is it a scented candle? Is that made out of wax? I'm like, it is not a scented candle. So when you place something on a pedestal, what you're saying is this is an object of art, and it has meaning and significance that is beyond its utilitarianism. So when you make a spoon or a bowl, you're like, this is made for putting food in your mouth. Like, it might be pretty, but it has a purpose. And the purpose is utilitarian purpose. But art is beyond decorative. Decorative art is beautiful. And I want to encourage everyone, if you're an artist and you just like painting flowers or decorative art or your cat, that is beautiful. And I want you to do that. My journey has been very, very focused. in perceiving and sharing this information here that my art is beyond mere decoration and it is beyond mere utility. The motivation for me to make my art is to share these calibrations with humanity and literally plant the seeds in the past that will transform the future. So it took me a little bit of time to be able to figure out, how can I be culturally relevant and perceived through your cultural filter as bringing an important message? All right. When you're going through your life and you're going through your levels of development, if I go back to this wonderful glass piece that died a horrible death, I talk about raising your energy simply because it feels like you are starting off with your energy down here. It feels like you're starting off swirling through this red chakra level, although you have to understand that these guys are in this painting, they are deconstructed and telescoped forward as if they are not nested together. But when they're in your body, these guys are all nested together. Those purple guys are on top of and interpenetrating the red guys. Okay. So I'm talking about this as if you move through a linear journey, but please know that it is not a linear journey like driving down the road from point A to point B. But what happens is you begin to move your energy through the red energy center, and you begin to move your energy through the orange energy center, through the yellow energy center, through the green energy center, and also through all of these higher faculties. And as you start to do that, you begin to perceive and receive information from those viewpoints. So there is a certain level of development where you have activated red, orange, yellow, green, light blue, and then you get up to dark blue, which is the indigo, which is your Christ chakra, and you're there. But you haven't yet gone beyond this level and activated the crown. That is the most vulnerable level of your development as an individual and as a society. And that journey, wait, can I do this? No, I want erase, 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 erase. And let's see, can I make this bigger? Can I make this thing? I want to take this thing away. I want to press on a thing. No, I don't know what I want to do. I want to take that away, and then I want to take this away. Can I take? Sorry, sorry. I'm trying to make this bigger. Hold on a second. Don't just stay with me, guys. We can do this. I want to do this. I want to make it bigger. Okay. And then I want to annotate. Come on, now I want to annotate. Now I made it bigger. Now, yes. I feel like a huge victory just occurred. The journey from here to here. This journey is a really important journey. That journey might just be a couple of centimeters, but it is a critical amount of journey, because that journey represents, this is the year 0, common era. BC AD, that is the year 0. Everything in this direction is BC, and everything in this direction is AD. All right. And we are in the year 2024 AD. You're like, Aurora, we know how to read a calendar. Stick with me, guys. The entire past 2,000 years has been the journey in terms of cultural human development, from the level of indigo here to reaching the level of violet here. And in reaching the level of violet, you are changing across a threshold and entering a new age. That's why they call it the New Age movement. And I'm very critical, but let's reclaim this wording, because this time of dark blue indigo that's over here, this is known as the age of Pisces, or the Piscean age, not the pissing on age, but the Piscean age, Pisces and the fish. And it is very much why the religion of Christ has the fish as its symbol, and so many other allusions to the fish in that time. This is about astronomical and astrological events, alignments with stars, constellations, and the human interpretation structure of that. But what you're doing right now is moving more into the violet level of comprehension and life experience, and it's a new age. You cross this threshold over here, and then you enter into the age of Aquarius. You may sing that song now if you would like. You sing it in your head. Aquarius. Can do it. The age of Aquarius is totally different than the age of Pisces. The age of Aquarius is signified by self-responsibility. The age of Pisces, the age that we are coming out of, literally the past 2,000 years of your recorded human history, this level over here has been the age of listening to external authority figures. Listen to a king, listen to a pope, listen to a university professor, listen to your mom, listen to your dad, listen to someone else outside of you. Follow a set of rules that is prepared and notated outside of you. And that is how you be a good person. And that is how you advance spiritually. And that is how you build your culture. And that those lessons were appropriate to that level of reality, but they are not appropriate anymore. That's like, let's say you're in music school and you're a beginning musician. This is the level of your musical training where they say, look, kid, you are going to play Mozart. Mozart was a good musician. Be like him. Follow these notes. That will make you a good musician. Okay, so for the past 2,000 years, you've been playing on your piano, following the musical notations of Mozart, and trying to play music exactly like him. But you've done it. You did all of the learning, you memorized all of his beautiful symphonies, and now you're playing like Mozart. But that is not the same as innovating your own music. In order to level up as a soul, you must relinquish your requirement to walk in the same footsteps and play the same musical notes as Mozart, and you must enter from this threshold and onward the time of self-responsibility, of self-generating, generating your own sense of right and wrong, generating your own sense of how you should navigate the world, not listen to a pope, your mom, your dad, a university professor, or anybody who is enthroned and outside of your reality, including an external conception of God. In the blue level of reality down here, God is described as an external figure that is anthropomorphic or shaped like a human that created the world and guides your path through the world. But in the level of violet that we are moving into, you claim responsibility as God. You claim responsibility as being a divine co-creator of reality. And you recognize that you are generating patterns, generating time edifices and structures that you then walk into and inhabit. And it's a totally different life experience, because in the level of blue down here that you're coming out of, if something was bad and you didn't like it happening in the world or happening in somebody's life, you would shake your fist at the sky and you would say, hey, you up there, I'm very mad. Something bad is happening down here. Get off your angelic butt and do something about it, right? But when you are at this level of reconnection to your identity as God, you're like, hey, everything is not okay down here. I'm shaking my fist at you up there. And you're like, wait a minute. I'm shaking my fist at myself up there. I am up there. That is me. I am shaking fist at me. I am mad at me. I am mad at my own inadequacies because I didn't make something right, because I didn't form reality in the right way, because something needs to be fixed and improved in reality. And here I am in embodiment to fix and improve what is here in reality. That is the critical behavioral distinction that is being made at this time in your energetic evolution. So you are evolving as a species, as a planet, and as a culture, and moving beyond blaming either determinism, which is don't blame me, I just work here, I know nothing, I just follow the rules, or blaming an external authority figure like a God or a Jesus, to moving into being an empowered employee. You're like, you know something? I don't just work here. I own the business. I'm sole proprietorship. I own and run the pie making business of the world. And if these pies are coming out burnt, I got to do something about it. It's my job. I got to adjust the ovens. I got to adjust the ingredients. I got to adjust the equipment. Or how about this? What if I'm like, I'm making beautiful, perfect pies, but like, how come no one's receiving them? How come no one's eating them? Similarly, you would have to say, instead of like, life isn't fair, no, none of this is my fault. You would have to look at your conception of an externalized authority figure, but embody that position and be like, well, I'm doing my job of making the pies, and then I also need to consider what I need to change in my job to bring those pies to the people who need them. And all of this is actually a very fun and expansive level of personal growth, where you become empowered to change reality instead of merely complain about reality. Although I do recognize that some people are comfortable in their self-identity and their position of being like, I'm just a downtrodden employee. I don't know SHIT, and everything around here is screwed up. It's not, none of it is my fault. Blame that guy over there. That's like a kind of a comfortable position. It's also, it's kind of crappy. It's kind of mediocre. And when we move into this new age, new chapter, and we're on a threshold that's a cosmic threshold. So it doesn't happen like in this nanosecond, we go across that threshold. It can be days, weeks, months, years. All right. We've been going across that threshold since like 2012, and it's now 2024, almost 2025. It's been taking a long time. You can be like, Aurora, this is taking a long time, looking at my watch. Yes, because it's in cosmic grand scale architecture. So you're in the process of letting go of the former paradigm and the behavioral patterns and cultural patterns of the former paradigm, and moving into a newly defined paradigm that is one of self-responsibility and internalized divine connection. And it takes a little bit of time to respond and to reshape your reality. And so some people are still dragging their asses, stuck in one foot in the former paradigm where they're like, don't blame me, none of this is my fault. And many of us are already embodying the new contextual reality where we're like, wow, I am responsible for this. I need to do stuff. This isn't just somebody else's fault. Like, this is something that I need to respond to. And then you might also be like, harumph, like those guys over there are still stuck in the old ways of doing things and they're not taking responsibility for their life. Boredom, bomb. Like, does this sound like your life right now? I'm sure it does, because some people did all sorts of things with listening to authority figures and putting tiny particles of stuff underneath their skin for different reasons. And then if it didn't go very well, then they might blame other people or other forces, or even blaming, when you look at the government itself, and you're in a moment right now of totally redefining your relationship to government, possibly even, let's say, having a separation or a divorce from government. If you're in relationship with government and you don't like what's going on, you can get a divorce. And I think that that's kind of where you're heading in this relationship. But will it be an amicable divorce? Or will it be like a knockdown, drag out fight where there's child custody hearings and lots of fights over your how to split up your resources? That's the real question. So I'm hoping for an amicable divorce as you guys are separating yourself from government. Why does government exist? Government is literally controlling of your mind and controlling of your behavior as a result. And it exists as coming out of the previous chapter of human experience, where it was considered something positive, that it was an evolutionary step to go from, relatively like loose levels of self-organization to go into a centralized government that unifies language, unifies commerce, unifies currency, and codifies law. And then everybody's on the same page, in the same chapter, on the same page, having the same expectations of what it is to be a good person and what you're supposed to do. And what is the social contract? What do you agree to just by participating in society? And was a good level of orthodoxy or structure and formalism for what you're coming out of. Just like going to the conservatory and learning to play nothing but Mozart, that was a good level of structure for your development as a musician. But now you are ready to jazz. And that can be a lot because when you're like a musician and you memorize a lot of things, then you're like, someone tells you play something, you're like, well, I can play anything that's in my repertoire. But if they say, play something new that you've never played before, that's when you're like, to freeze up as a musician. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm very bad at what I do. It's like, no, put your shoulders up. You're good at what you do, but you have to learn to innovate. Regurgitation is very different than innovation. And a lot of your educational systems over the past 2000 years have been about regurgitation. Like here, internalize these facts, then say them back to me. Now you're educated. But education, when you look at art and music, is not just about regurgitation. When maybe you have had this experience, go to a museum. I don't know if you guys have ever been to a museum, but if you have ever been to like an art museum, sometimes you will find art students there with their easels in the museum. And what they're doing is internalizing a famous painting and then trying to copy it so that they can learn to paint like the original guys that made this painting. But do they put the copy in a museum? No. You're like, I'm an art student. I made a copy of Van Gogh's Starry, Starry Night. Please put me in a museum. They'd be like, ah, ha, ha. No. Van Gogh's in the museum because he innovated that painting. You copied that painting, which is good because you learned from it, but you do not belong in a museum. But what you do is you copy enough paintings until you learn what it is to make a painting. Then you make something new that no one has ever made before. Then hopefully you're recognized and they put you in a museum. Okay. So we're talking about now the masterpiece of your life and the masterpiece of your soul. And you've been going around copying stuff and following directives and internalizing pre-existing patterns. But you are now at the cultural cosmic moment where you have to stop just regurgitating what other great people have already done in both art, music, and governance, and you have to innovate. And this is important and possibly daunting because, again, like every time you sit down to innovate as an artist or musician, it's like walking the tightrope. You're like, this could be great, or I could totally crash and burn. It could be terrible. Really, it takes a lot of bravery to perform in front of people and come up with something new that you are just making up in the moment. So how do musicians do that? How do I do that? And the answer is, what I learned was how to internalize patterns that tend to sound good together. Like when you make food, you know that tomato and basil always taste good together. You cannot go wrong with tomato and basil. And in the piano keyboard, you can hear certain notes sound good together. And so you're like, you know something? I just played this note over here. I could turn on my whole piano and change the sound settings. You want me to give a little concert. But I know this sound is always going to sound good with this sound. Tomato and basil, they sound good together. So if I play a song where I start to innovate and I play a C, I'm like, I think the next note I'm going to play is an E because I know it's going to sound good. So there's like recipes that you can internalize as a musician to give yourself some formalism and some structure, even while you're in moments of innovation. That's exactly what the chakras are. Let's go back to the chakras. Chakras are your basic recipe. Let's do an overall screen share. Overall screen share so I can focus on, no, now I have to get rid of this, but I want to be able to show you this part, not so zoomed in, and this part over here also not so zoomed in. Can we not so zoom in? Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, so both of these are showing you the same information, but just using two different ways to be able to show it. And this one over here shows you with your body, so that way you can kind of relate to it more as a human. These are your patterns and your basic recipes. And the more that you learn about the interconnectedness of these patterns, then the more easily you can innovate in a moment of pure expression. Like when I showed you over here how the circle that is part of your turquoise chakra over here rests perfectly inside of the larger circle that is your yellow chakra. That's because your communication and authenticity has a direct relationship to your intellect. And when you look at these very, very crucial aspects of your higher senses, your eye of insight and your violet divine connection, they have a very, very particular level of harmonic interaction. And let me tell you more about that. Because when I first started teaching these concepts years ago, of course, I comprehended what human marriage and partnership in relationship is, biological partnership and relationship. I am not married and I've never been married or had babies, but I comprehend what it is. And I've worked as a live-in nanny and a live-in babysitter. And, I've had a lot of interaction with human families, so I could even comprehend and calibrate to what this is. But initially, out of my naivete in recording the original whiteboards, I talked about a marriage, partnership between your indigo chakra and your violet chakra. And I talked about marriage in the sense of ideals, without really recognizing that in using that word and portraying it in this way, many people would be emotionally triggered as to their definition or personal experience of what marriage and partnership is, which often equates to very out of balance sexual dynamics, what people even call the war of the sexes. They're like, these people are at war? Like, I thought they were married. It's like, yes, they are married and they're fighting each other every day. And those of you who are married, you might laugh, oh, like happy anniversary, dear. But it's kind of funny because it's kind of true. But I'm coming at this from a very pristine and angelic viewpoint, where in partnership you do not have a dynamic of fighting for supremacy. So now, as I've learned more about human society, I have come to recognize that many life partnerships, marriages, and biological reproductive partnership proposals are all about power dynamic. Who's powerful in the relationship? Who wears the pants in this family? Who makes the crucial decisions? Who brings home the bacon and puts the food on the table? All of these things are very cultural. They relate to culture. They relate to gender. They relate to religion. They relate to your biological imperative. There's deep stuff. I've had to learn and research all of this, all these different things. But the basics of it is that I recognize that you personally might fight with or have conflict with your spouse, partner, mate, or might have come from a family where there was constant friction and conflict between spouse, partners, and mates about who's in charge. And that there's a lot of stuff here fighting males versus females in especially biological partnership about who is supreme, who owns the resources, who makes the decisions, who makes the choices. Throw it all out the window, because in your own anatomy and in the highest levels of pristine energy that I'm talking about in reality, you don't have a fight between your indigo chakra and your Christ consciousness and your violet chakra, your crown of pure divine connection. All right. These are not like when you have a husband and a wife or boyfriend and girlfriend, where you're like, well, what are we going to eat for dinner? I want Chinese. Well, I want Italian. Well, let's fight about it. Or any other thing, like, I say we should move to Oregon. Well, I say we should move to South America. Let's fight about it. Okay. We're talking about your navigational higher senses to bring you as a cohesive consciousness, piece of individuality through time. And these are two separate viewpoints, but they're complementary and they can't fight. They cannot fight. They have to work together for you to stay alive. If you want to stay alive and travel through time and be on the path of least likelihood and make it to the source destination, instead of hitting into the membrane of death, your inner architecture has to collaborate. They cannot be in competition. They cannot be in conflict. So this is very, very big stuff, because in your religion, that is based upon the life of Jesus of Nazareth, that is now called Christianity, is not, the dogma of that religion is not synonymous with what it is to be in Christ, or what it is to activate your anthropomorphic viewpoint on the level of your indigo chakra. But that religion says that guy said, I am the way and I'm the light, and the only way you're getting up to God is to go through me. All right. That's very exclusive and also exclusionary. It's my way or the highway. And then it puts an implied power struggle with that entity and level of consciousness with this entity and level of consciousness. That would be aligned with the feminine, divine connection, and actually a faster level of yourself. This is yourself moving at a particular rate through time, and then this is yourself moving at a faster rate through time. That is actually the fastest level and layer of your being, while still be defined as being within the human octave. And those two parts of yourself can't be in a fight for supremacy. The anthropomorphic viewpoint cannot fight and say, I am supreme. Your stupid abstract viewpoint should sit its butt down and stop giving me a hard time and stop hassling me and telling me what to do. But you understand, that's the meme in this culture. That's always like men that are like, my wife is always telling me what to do. Like, honey, fix this, honey, do this, honey, do that. Like, sit your butt down. Stop telling me what to do. You know, like I am exaggerating and hyperbolizing, but you know, if I were more comedic, you'd laugh about it. You're like, it's funny because it's true. But it's not the way it's supposed to be. And in your body, it's not supposed to be that way at all. So in idealistic terms, your crown chakra, first of all, is directly analogous to your DNA, directly analogous to your divine connection and where you get your energy from or where you get your groceries from the grocery store from, okay? And that is also like the needle in a compass. If you guys are ever lost at sea, here's how you make a compass to find your way home. Just file this away, like how to float on quicksand, like life survival information. So you have like an outer bowl, put water in it, and you put a cork or something that floats in the center of the water that's floating. And then you have to have a needle. It must be metal, something that you can magnetize. And you can magnetize it by like rubbing it in one direction or, you know, whatever, find something that has a natural magnetism, and you place it on top of the cork. And then that becomes your needle that aligns with the North Pole and tells you which direction you need to sail your ship, right? Okay. That is the concept of this compass, this navigational device. Your violet chakra is your compass. It is your navigational device that tells you not where is the North Pole, but where is God? Which direction is divinity? How do you fly through time to be closer to God, closer to the source, closer to that central convergence point, the destination of your consciousness? So in your anatomy, your violet chakra is the most vulnerable and sensitive aspect of your anatomy. In your body, in your light body, your DNA is the most vulnerable and sensitive aspect of your anatomy. And your DNA is a sensory organ, just like the compass of a needle of a compass, that senses reality structures. Your DNA can align with certain realities. It's an antenna. It sends and receives information. And it sends and receives information to and from God. And you get information that tells you, like, you need to go over here, or you need to do this, or you need to have this life experience, okay? And then the insight, your Christ level of being, is supposed to be like the protective outer covering, the bowl that this whole entire sensitive apparatus sits within. Your Christ sense of self, the blue protective force field around your head and your skull and your brain, is supposed to be a protective force field that keeps out errant signals so that you can feel and sense correctly. So that would be like if I'm an artist and I want to have my art studio be nice and clean and well lit. It doesn't matter what's going on out there in the garden. It doesn't matter what's going on there down the street. They can be all dirty and corrupt and poorly configured, as long as my art studio is nice and clean so I can make a perfectly calibrated Fabergé egg. All right. In your body, the Christ force field acts to keep out errant signals, crapola, and stuff that shouldn't be affecting your consciousness as you are in the divine and sacred activity of reality creation, giving birth to reality or flying closer to God. Christ is supposed to protect the crown. The religious dogma, I am all there is, love it or leave it. The only way you're getting to heaven is through me, you know, kind of like deal with it, loser. And apologies if I sound like I'm mocking your deeply held beliefs. I am not, although I am being very lighthearted and hyperbolic about exaggerated in what I'm saying. But the outer Christ is not supposed to say, I'm it, I'm the destination. There's nothing further to go from beyond what I am. It is a pathway to something even higher. And Christ, as a concept and as a higher dimensional telepathic network, is meant to protect that divine union experience. Christ force field is meant to protect your DNA. Christ, the network, which is like a network of connected consciousnesses on the telepathic time phone, is meant to protect your deepest inner levels of divine connection so that you can ascend, so that you can drive closer to God. And there's never a power dynamic. You're never going to have the man, the husband, the Christ in your an anatomical relationship being exasperated at the crown. Be like, oh, now you want me to fix the cabinets, and now you want me to fix the car, and now you want me to fold the laundry. Like, it's never going to be that way. The Christ is always like, thank you so much for your directives. I will listen to you because you are the direct connection to God. The Christ is supposed to defer to the crown and to say, you have the direct connection to God and to divinity, and then you are transmitting that information to me. I'm not going to argue with you. The divine presence tells you this, and you then tell me this. I'm going to do what you tell me to do. And I'm also going to protect you in your activity of being this incredibly delicately calibrated needle of a compass. That's how the relationship is supposed to be. Maybe we can go into all sorts of biological paradigms about like males have bigger muscles and they're supposed to protect their pregnant wives. And like, yes, this is a biological imperative. And other things too, like government and religious structures are meant to protect the vulnerable people and their families and their babies growing up. I'm like, yes, that is how it's supposed to be. But on the level of pure energy, what is supposed to happen is Christ and the Christ network and the protective force field that is emanated from your pineal gland is supposed to protect your DNA and your divine connection so that you may be divinely guided. And then let's talk about what the experience is like from the crown. The crown is this very, very elegant and, again, vulnerable or sensitive aspect of your body. Think about like your physical eyes, how they are vulnerable and crucial. It hurts a lot if something gets in your eye, like even a tiny speck of dust or sand that gets in your eye, and it hurts a lot. Your eyes need to be protected. Eyelashes, eyelids, protective goggles sometimes. Eyes need to be protected. And your DNA is very similar. It is a sight, a perceiver, a manifester that brings you a huge amount of information, but it can be overwhelmed. Like your eyes are vulnerable. You not only can get dust in your eye, but what if I shine a too bright light into your eye? Your eyes can get frozen. What if I shine a laser into your eyes? Your eyes can get incinerated. Have to protect these very sensitive navigational aspects of your being. And the protective force field of Christ is meant to be that safety feature that holds and protects the crown so that you can be sensitive, so that you can feel with like the greatest level of touch sense sensitivity. Where is God? Where is divinity? And then no arguments. So when you have effective, what's it called? Assignment of unique jobs. There's a word for it. Like when you have, your heart is made for pumping and your bones are made for structure. Like you have every part of your body has a job. When you have things set up in that way anatomically and it's a pristine system, nobody's going to argue. Nobody in your body is going to be like, stupid heart. Like, who do you think you are standing there pumping blood? Like, I'm supposed to be pumping blood. It's like, no, like you're a tooth cell. You're not supposed to be pumping blood at all. Like you're supposed to chew up food. Like, stop taking my job. This is my job. All right. In the business, the company, the corporation of your own anatomy here, no one's ever resentful of your crown or your DNA. Like stupid, have you ever worked at a job and your boss tells you like, hey, this floor isn't clean, wash it again. And you're mopping the floor and you're like, stupid boss, telling me to mop the floor, telling me I didn't do a good enough job. Nobody grumbles in your body. Nobody grumbles and says like stupid crown, connecting to God, telling me a bunch of stuff and telling me what to do. That does not happen. Instead, your body is like, hooray, I just got the information from the crown that connects to God that's telling me exactly what I need to do. Thank you, crown. Good job. I'm going to do my job now. Got it? So same thing with the eye of insight here. This eye of insight is so happy to be directed by this crown chakra. What does that mean? I often use the analogy that your eye of insight is like getting a library card or matriculating to the University of the Universe. Maybe you first got your library card when you were like a little kindergartner. Maybe it was like before you went to school, or maybe when you first went to school. But at some point, I'm sure they taught you what is the municipal library in your town. And here is how you go there and get books. Have to have your library card, which is a rite of passage and a sign of responsibility. Like you're not going to get candy on the books, and you're not going to steal the books, and you're not going to tear pages out of the books. You're going to be a good person in the library. But then when you're a little tiny child, you go into the library and they're like, okay, here's your library card. Now you can take out any book that you want. And you look around, there's rows and rows of books and everything. And maybe you're excited, but maybe you're intimidated because you're like, I barely even know how to read. Like, how do I know which book to choose? And then the answer is you talk to the librarian. Your crown chakra is your librarian. And the librarian can guide you. Where are the books that are appropriate for your level of comprehension? And if you're a tiny child, it's like, well, here's the kids section. There's like a little carpet and little tiny chairs and little simple books, See Spot Run. And that's where you're going to start. And you're going to read that stuff. And then when you grow up and you learn more, then you can come over here and you can read books with more words and books that have more challenging themes that otherwise would be beyond your level of development. Like you would never want to have a tiny child as the first book that they ever read when they were trying to become literate be a book about World War II, rape, torture, and sexual degradation. Like that would not be age appropriate. Not only the vocabulary, but the adult themes that are being explored are beyond the level of comprehension of a tiny child. Same thing for you when you first start to awaken your insight. When you are fully awakened, you not only can see that letters exist, but you know how to interpret those letters and you become literate. So in your physical world, when you were a tiny child, you could see that letters exist, but you didn't know what they meant. But everyone's always showing you flashcards and things. And you're like, I don't know. They're holding up these things. I don't know. I just eat Cheerios. Like, I don't know what is going on. But at a certain point, you go to preschool and school, and then something makes sense inside of you. And you're like, oh, these are symbols. And that's what I'm singing the symbol song every day. Now I know my symbol song. Hooray, I learned. Like, I'm talking about the ABCs. And then you learn how to make word structures out of your ABCs. And then you learn how to interpret those word structures. You achieve literacy. So perception is different than literacy. You guys are in the stage where you're infants of consciousness and you're just starting to perceive the existence of words. Like you don't even know what the words mean, but you're like, sometimes I feel cold chills come through my body, or sometimes I see a blue light, or sometimes I smell a weird taste. I don't know what these things mean, but don't give up. It's like, imagine if you were a tiny child and you were like, yeah, like adults are always showing me these pictures and I have no idea what they mean. I guess I'll just tune out forever. It means nothing. You would never learn. So file all of these weird light body sensations away for like learning more. And at a certain point, it's going to click. Like when you went to kindergarten and you're like, now I know my symbol song. This is what this is, what they're singing to me. Okay. So at a certain point, you're going to decode the information that's coming to you. Oh, hey, honey girl, you gotta mute yourself. It's not a girl, it's a boy. Mr. Man, you gotta mute yourself. I didn't mean to sound authoritarian. You have to begin to make sense of these symbols and then become literate. So when you start to get your light body awakening, that means that your eye of insight is starting to give you information but you might not even yet have connected to your librarian to know, what do I need to read? How do I read? You don't know anything yet. So file this all away. And at a certain point, you activate all the way up to the crown. So you'll know it when it happens. When you are only activating up to this level, you see and sense things on the level of human interpretation. You look out through your telescope, you book time on the telescope, and you comprehend things about people. Like maybe you might be musing in a reverie about a relationship, and you might think about a person, and all of a sudden you'll have a flash of insight, and you will say, oh, now I comprehend why that person was motivated to do blah, blah, blah to me in my life. And hopefully you grow and evolve from that information. These insights are literally like the enzymes that are needed to unlock an experience so that you don't just feel like a hapless victim in a purely deterministic, like cruel charade of reality, so that you start to be like, things make sense and things happen for a reason, and I am empowered by this information. Information comes to you non-randomly, very, very specifically, and for the purposes of your inner growth, okay? But you're still on a human level. Like you're thinking about human relationships and human motivations. And it might even be something like maybe you were 3 years old and you're like, why did my older cousin steal my ice cream from me when I was 3? And you're putting your telescope on that moment in time. And then you come to learn about it and you're like, oh, because my cousin felt like this, or oh, because my cousin was like this, or this and this, and it made me feel like this. And then I learned and grew, and that's how I unlocked that experience. Okay. But that is very, very different than seeing on the abstract level. When you get up to the level of activating your violet chakra and you're guided completely by your inner librarian, nothing is on the human level. It is like pure math. You're not like, why did I lose my ice cream cone? You're like, 3 units of energy were diminished from my energy field. And then you can also see how the loss of 3 units of energy destabilized your structure of your life. The patterns that you look at, they look like these patterns. They look like what's on my dress. They look like what's in my room over here. Let's see if I turn on some lighting, if you can see it a little bit better. You can see things a little bit better. I do these paintings because they teach me and they teach the viewer. I've had to learn a lot about how these harmonic patterns and these circles fit together. But once I mastered those patterns, then I made sense of everything that I was seeing. So in my own journey, initially, I would see just all of these patterns and I didn't know the elements that they were made up out of. And it took a long time in my own education of my consciousness to be able to break down the complexities of what I was seeing into simplistic units that I could then share with others. That was it. So if you want to know what my experience is like coming here as Aurora, from the very, very beginning, I saw on the level of pure abstraction. Because again, I'm like very advanced in my experiences that I've already had being a walk-in. Like this is not my first rodeo. I have done this many, many times before. So I didn't hang around at the level of anthropomorphic seeing for like several decades, and then one day have a flash of these complex patterns. I always comprehended these complex patterns and actually had very little training on the level of human comprehension. That I comprehended things and felt most comfortable on the level of pure math and pure abstraction. And when I had to interact on the level of anthropomorphic community, that's when I felt lost. Because I was like, math makes sense to me, but people do not make sense to me. And we can have so many fun Aurora stories about the early years when I was here because like math makes sense. 1 + 1 = 2, but people do not make sense. You're like, why do people do what they do? I do not understand this at all. And actually, a lot of the nanny and professional babysitting work that I did was in those early years. I was learning a lot about humans, human families, and human dynamics from these interactions. But you could, I'm sure, laugh thinking about me as this incredibly abstract, numerical object working for a human family, like making some kid whatever their chicken nuggets or their little ice cream sandwiches for their dinner, and trying to comprehend what is going on, what motivates people. Like I did not have the equations to unlock these people or what they were doing. And often when I've shared those stories and my incomprehensible responses to some of these things, I even wrote a song one time called, it's on Birth of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. It's called Incomprehensible Rules. And that's what I'm saying with that song. That is basically like, this place does not make sense to me. There were a lot of things that did not make sense to me because human behavior is non-rational and not everything doesn't always add up. And also, poetic allegory doesn't make sense to me. There were many times when people would share with me their poetry, they'd be like, an artist or a friend, and they'd be like, I'd like to share this poem that I wrote with you. And I'd always be like this, ah, like, I don't understand poetry, but I would be very polite. I'd be like, fantastic, like, thank you for sharing your creativity with me. But I would always have to say to people, I learned like in a positive way, like, I don't really understand poetry. Can you explain that to me? Because some people get it. Like if you say like poetry, 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 the moon is like whatever, a giant piece of green cheese or whatever poetry uses. And I would be like, what does this mean? Like, I do not understand this. But I don't say to people like, your poems are bad and wrong. But I say, I don't understand this. Can you help me to understand this more? Because it's often a deep sharing from a person's emotional state that they want to, give to me in some way. And I don't want people to feel diminished. So if you write poetry out there, and if you sometimes people have even shared it in the comments, I really always appreciate it. But just know that I don't even know how to digest what is being given to me because my anthropomorphic and cultural filter is so very different. So yeah, that's been my main weak point, has been not comprehending human motivation, human emotion, and poetic allegory. And I'm very literal also. So I have many funny Aurora stories of like interpreting something literally when people were being euphemistic. And then I had to learn like they didn't mean exactly what they said. They meant something completely different. Oh, they meant something completely different. And of course, I'm intelligent enough to be able to compare like what they said versus what I experienced. And so then I had to learn like, I'm going to have to recalibrate here because they do not always mean exactly what they say. All right. You can just, there's a lot of very, very funny stories that I have about that. We won't go into all of them now. Most people are the opposite of me, where they are very, very comfortable on the human anthropocentric level. They understand human behavior. They understand like what's cool, what's not cool, why people do what they do, why families fight, why kids act out, why do kids flush weird things down the toilet. They understand those things. And math is what is weird, opaque, and incomprehensible. They're like, I don't know, these complex equations and all of these complex patterns. I'm intimidated by that. I don't understand it. And I'm like, math is my friend. No, math is my comfy pajamas. I'm like, I can't wait to get into my comfy math pajamas and just do math. And I have shared that with you that when I worked as a custom framer, which is when I was most interactive with like random people in society, because now I'm selective about who I interact with. But when I worked in a retail store being a custom framer, that was when I interacted with the most, types of people. And I found it very challenging because I did not comprehend people's language structures, their emotional structures, their motivations. I didn't always understand sarcasm and opposite talk. And it was very taxing for me because I'd have to be like thinking a lot, like I had to try very hard to kind of like understand where people were coming from. And also people were not telepathic, which this, class is about telepathy, but people were not telepathing with me. And I felt very, it was difficult for me to navigate the relationship. And that was just like a very cut and dried relationship. What was good about that position is when you're working in a retail context, like it's very simple. This is the customer. They have come to you. They want to buy something. Money will be exchanged. Goods will be exchanged. Then they will leave the store. That is something that makes sense to me, right? But many other things did not make sense. So my part of the interactivity that was the most fun and comfortable to me was the part when I got to give them their estimate. Because like during the rest of the whole talking with someone, you have to be like, well, oh, like they bring in whatever, a sad clown painting. They're like, hi, I'd like to frame this painting. And you have to be like, that's a beautiful sad clown painting. I'm happy to help you frame it. You can't be like, it's a waste of art. and I'm insulted by it. Like, you can't do that. And then you have to go through this whole conversation where you're like, well, what style of frame do you want? And what's your budget? And what's your this and what's your that? A lot of anthropomorphic do-si-do that has to happen in that moment. But then once you finally get all of that out, and you're like, okay, you want to have a 24-inch frame, and you want to have this type of glass, and you want to have this type of mat, and you want it to look like this. And then I say, give me a few minutes while I just whip up your estimate. And then I just get to add up numbers. And that's when I would be like, oh, now I get into my comfy math pajamas and I just have to do math. And I just add up this, and this. And then the answer is, whatever, 7832 to frame your sad clown painting. And that was like, the most whatever comfortable respite for me. And so then, of course, what I did was I engineered my life so that I would spend less time in the uncomfortable, swimming around in the uncomfortable, uncharted waters of human interactivity, and more time doing things in the realm of math, pattern making, and abstraction that I'm very, very comfortable in. And that also relates to like dreams, dream interpretation, hypnotic regressions, any of those things. Like, that is not really how I use my psychic powers even to this day. What I do is high level of computation, pattern recognition, pattern creation, and encryption, and connecting to time directly. And on a very, very secondary level, really, as an effort, as a muscle that I've learned in human interactivity, is comprehension on the human, social, emotional level of what motivates people, why they do things, and how it makes you feel, of course. Because when you say 1 + 1 = 2, it is not about your feelings. That is what I'm trying to get across to you here. These two different viewpoints. One is negotiable. When you take a poetry class, then a poem is presented and you say, oh, the poem is about this. And then another person says, the poem is about this. And the answer is, those are both right answers. And I'm like, I'm confused. I don't know what the poem is about. But then if you take a math class, it's like 1 + 1 = 2. And that guy's like, yep, 1 + 1 = 2. And then everyone's like, okay, we all agree, 1 + 1 = 2. And then I'm like, oh, comfy math pajamas. Everybody agrees. So, but that is truthful when you are navigating the time field, which is an abstract experience. You have, on the one hand, your interpretation and, self-story that happens through your viewpoint of being a person swimming through time. And that's all the different insights that you might gain, like, why did my cousin steal my ice cream? Why did this happen? Why did this person act in this way? And it informs your human relationships. But when you evolve beyond that level, then you see that your cousin stole your ice cream cone, not only because of their emotions and who they are as a person and their definition of self in the world, but really because they were conforming to larger patterns in time and larger causality structures. And they stole your ice cream because it was part of a long chain of events that led to that moment, and then a long chain of events that would evolve, would generate and expand outward from that moment. But none of this justifies the stealing of ice cream. You can't be like, oh, 1 + 1 = 2, and that's why that guy did that bad thing. It's all okay. No, it's not okay, because I don't want you to think that I'm bashing around in the world like 1 + 1 = 2. I don't care about your feelings, because people's feelings do matter. So it's not acceptable to be like, that's it, everybody out of my way. I'm busy calculating, and all I care about is what's correct on the abstract level. You do care about what is happening on the experienced anthropomorphic level, and there should be an integration between the two. That's the relationship that you're having between the crown and the Christ. So the crown is vulnerable in its literalism, in its sensitivity, in its requirement for logic, in its requirement for staying the same. Like 1 + 1 = 2, and it's always going to be that way, and it's not going to change, and there's no room for interpretation. That can be a strength, but that can also be a real vulnerability, that rigidity of the definition of truth. At the level of insight and Christ and anthropocentric viewpoint can be very strong in that it allows for multiple interpretations, can be flexible, but can also be hugely fallible. Because sometimes when you explain things on the human level and you're like, oh, this happened because of this, it's kind of true, but it's not really true. It's not the same as being like, oh, like this guy stole ice cream because of 7.5 plus 5.3 led to this end result. That is very different. Like you might say, he stole ice cream because of his feelings or the way that his father treated him growing up, or because of any of these other things. Like those are all truthful, but they are truthful on a less focused level of reality. So the level of seeing through pure abstraction is really seeing the recipe of reality. That's why I liken it to that movie, The Matrix. It is unarguable, but the levels of anthropomorphic seeing are eating the cupcakes of reality. You're not looking at the recipe, you're eating and experiencing the thing that is generated from those abstractions, and it's a sensory experience, but there's a ton of room for interpretation. So I bring this to you as a caution because most humans are coming from the level of red up to the level of violet and experience anthropocentric seeing before they ever experience abstraction, if they ever get to the level of abstraction. So don't get stuck here. Keep going. And a lot of people do a lot of crazy and messed up stuff when they get to this level here. And your whole entire world has been at this level here for the past 2,000 years, which is why you have had a very, very messed up past 2,000 years. You have not had a very peaceful, wonderful, amazing time, even though Christ has been activated in your world for the past 2,000 years, because it has been not the full journey. And just as times of superstition were a time when people had partial insight, but not total clarity, and it was often used for great levels of disruption and imbalance and justifications of violence, the same type of thing can happen when you have an inner insight, because it is quite unarguable, even on the human level. Like you might just know, like, that guy's a liar. I don't have any evidence to support that. I just know that it's true. And that should help you to navigate so that that way you are not exploited by that guy. But it's not the same as being able to go with a dossier and say, here's all the evidence that I have of how that guy is a liar. And that proves all of that. There's not proof. There's just deep insight and deep intuition. And both of these levels of reality, here and here, are beyond verbalism. They do not involve the English language. They are your true mind. The level of yellow is not your true mind. I call it your hacked human operating system. It is an implant. And you can tell that it's an implant because you didn't come here with that. You had to learn. You had to learn how to talk. Did you guys come here speaking perfect English or Spanish or Chinese or whatever you speak? No. You came here speaking the cosmic language of truth, which is what little nonverbal babies speak. Little nonverbal babies are really maybe not in that level of pure mathematical comprehension of the lines and, polygons of the world, but they are in their deep knowing beyond language. And then the implant of the yellow mind is the implantation of language and secondarily of rationalism. And rationalism and rational analysis is a level of the intellect that is used to explain the insights of reality. So again, have an insight on the human level that says, that guy over there is a liar. And then your intellect kicks in and it's like, what do you mean that guy's a liar? That guy's my friend. That guy's my business partner. That guy's this. That guy's my father. How could he be a liar? And then you're like, I require evidence. The rational, analytical mind, intellect requires evidence. Then you go on a fact-finding mission. Then you find all of the evidence that supports the truth of what you know. And then that truth is confirmed. And then you're like, yep, I knew that guy was a liar all along. And this is how, most people navigate. But the intellect, in its requirement of analytical, rational information, is a gatekeeper. As impulses come through your body, they come from higher dimensional, less dense realms up here through your body and then outward into the physical. They also come from the physical upward through your heart, back to divinity, back to the sun, back to the levels of pure abstraction. And the thing that blocks signals in both directions is the gatekeeper of the rational intellect. When your rational intellect cannot accept something, it's like, that's it. That is BS. I can't accept that. I can't believe in that. I take issue with that. I argue against it. Struggle. I'm not going to let that signal go through. Get it? It is an inflammatory response or a rejection of pieces of information when the intellect, the rational analytical intellect, cannot rationalize something, cannot make sense of something. Rationalizing, analyzing, and making sense of something are coping mechanisms for people that have minimal insight. It's trying to build a picture of the world using suppositions and building blocks without being able to see the real truth. And it's often very inaccurate. So this viewpoint down here is much less accurate than this viewpoint over here, but this viewpoint over here is less accurate than this viewpoint over here. But this viewpoint over here, when it meets this viewpoint over here, this guy down here can hardly ever accept what this guy up here is saying. That's why you often have to turn this guy off. These are the implants. These the verbalized mind, rational analytical mind, and the implanted energy structures of really a parasitic, unhealthy overlay that has been designed to take you away from yourself. The God messages that are coming from the highest level where you plug into pure divinity are often discounted and rejected by the rational intellect. That's like, I can't believe in that. That can't be true. That's not a part of my world. La 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 la, fingers in my ears. I will not listen to that. Get it? And that is why those viewpoints are often edited out of a person's reality. So again, in previous descriptions of humanity and of the world, humans were described as a physical body with emotional mammalian presence, and then a little bit of cerebral cortex on top of there, and discounting almost all of these other signals. And the aspiration of even getting to the level of green into the heart was seen as something only for the most special people. Like only a very special, once in 1,000 years, someone shall be born who will do this thing, or like an avatar, a special spiritual person, unique chosen person, someone also who would withdraw from human society and go and sit in isolation on a mountaintop in a cave somewhere, that they would have that level of pure, radiant love and acceptance. But that is not the ultimate part of the journey. For many ages ago, that was the ultimate of what you could aspire to. But I need for you guys to know that that might have been the aspirational goal of generations ago, but for you, that is baseline normal. That is just not the ultimate pinnacle and accumulation of all of your efforts of your life. That's like your beginning baby step. To be able to meditate, to be able to turn off your rational mind, to be able to turn off or press pause on your verbalized mind, and to be able to allow those signals to flow through your body without judgment. Usually the intellect steps forward in judgment, and it doesn't just say, I can't listen to that information, or I can't accept that information. It says, that is wrong. That is wrong. And it might even say moralistically wrong. Like, it is moralistically wrong to think that. What if you think that guy over there is a liar? Your intellect might say, that is wrong. You are a bad person for thinking that. Got it? And it is a huge amount of self-censorship and limitation of the viewpoint that is given to you by your divine connection so you can navigate reality. And the judgments about yourself being wrong, the lack of self-compassion, the lack of self-forgiveness, often is not just this implant that is your human operating system, but how your human operating system connects to established patterns of ethics and morality in your world. That you could be in a culture where it's like showing your ankles is inherently immoral and wrong. And, your divine connection will give you information on the abstract level, and your intellect will reject it fully because it will say, it's not moral for me to even think that thought. I can't even have that impression. I can't see that. I'm not allowed to see that and know that about reality. It makes me a bad person to see and know that about reality. So I want you to clear all of that stuff out. Clear the decks, because none of that stuff is actually you. Those are all unhappy behavioral control systems that are implanted within you to take you away from your divine connection. The bad stuff about having a daily waking intellect and rational analytical aspect of self is when it takes you away from divinity. It's kind of like in the relationship, who are you going to listen to? Your stupid rational mind that tells you what you're allowed to think and what you're not allowed to think and how you're allowed to see the world, or God, your divine connection that tells you, like, although it might be inconvenient, this is the truth of the world that you're in, or this is the truth of the moment that you are in. And the intellect, in being a very diluted level of reality, can allow you to arrive at completely flawed conclusions, but with total levels of confidence. You're like, yep, I know the truth. I have analyzed it and used my rational mind to achieve this as the truth. And then you find out I was totally wrong. And it was from erroneous information or lack of information. The viewpoint from your abstract crown chakra is really the viewpoint of totality. That's when you see everything from standing on the peak of Mount Everest, the highest mountain that you can climb to. That is the ultimate. So you see every other mountain, every other peak, every other valley, every other behavioral interactivity that is happening, and you see it on a mathematical abstract level across time. So your cousin might have stolen an ice cream cone from you. It wasn't even about his family, his dad, how he was traumatized by a cartoon figure in one point in his life. It's about who he's been across time, across multiple incarnations, about the interactions that you've had in various different parallel existences and levels of reality. It goes very, very deep. So there's a lot of information that comes in from your pure abstract insight at divine connection. And you have loss of signal. Every time you go through one of these chakras and the information goes through a chakra, it's like losing some of the clarity. So you start out with total clarity, then lose a little bit to come into the anthropomorphic viewpoint, then lose a little bit as words are put to that insight so it can be articulated, then lose a little bit as it comes through your levels of acceptance in your heart, then lose a little bit as it comes into your intellect. So you have lost a lot in translation, in translating that signal into something that can be perceived by your intellect. Your intellect, if you simply perceived the white hot, fast information that is coming directly from God, would be incinerated. Your intellect would, if you plugged directly in, would be like, I can't take it. My brains are liquefying. My mind is blown. I can't function any longer. That's it. The intellect is actually a very, very flimsy aspect of yourself because it is hacked, because it is not innate, because it is poorly formed. It is very vulnerable and vulnerable to destabilization. And too much information and too much intensity of information can overwhelm it very easily. So the intellect is largely protecting itself by throwing out assertions and information that it finds to be inconvenient so that it can even continue to exist. But what you would ideally like to have is, just like you want your body to be strong and flexible, ideally you want to have a strong and flexible intellect. You don't have to get rid of your intellect entirely, because that would be the equivalent of being developmentally disabled. If you didn't have language, if you didn't have rationality, if you didn't have analysis, there's a lot of things that you couldn't do in order to interface with the rest of the world here that would diminish you as a person. Again, like developmentally disabled people are, very valuable, positive community members, but they don't have the same capacities that other people have in what they're able to do with their minds. So you want to have a mind that can think, that can perceive, that can conceive of things, that can articulate and connect as an interface with other egos in a social emotional presence, but that isn't going to liquefy under the intensity of information that comes directly from the divine source. And that's a lot. You're asking a lot of your intellect. So it can't be this fragile thing. It has to be a very, very well-formed structure, not like a Jenga tower. If you guys know what Jenga is. Not some, tea-turning, poorly formed, poorly architected thing. If you take one little aspect out of it, the whole thing falls down. But a well-formed, well-architected space that can contain different levels of information and will not be destabilized by apparent illogics or self-conflicts. I want to go through my notes and make sure I got everything that's important because we're heading into the end of class. The sun is going down. It's that time of year. Okay, so wait, let's go back all the way to what Pedro asked early in class. It said, hi, God's consciousness is everywhere. Is it also in time, the interstices, and in things sent to entropy? Great question. Thank you so much for being a beautiful long-term student in my class, Pedro, because you ask great questions. So God's consciousness is everywhere, and that includes throughout all time, and yes, in the interstices, but God's consciousness is in the interstices when they are shaped correctly and they are pristine. So let's say I'm God, and I'm the architect, and I built a house, and the house has a hallway from this room to this room over here, and the hallway is the interstices, and it's supposed to be just a nice, clear hallway to get from this place to this place. And that would be the expression of God, in the architecture of the interstices. But something else that is an aberrance that is not from God has come along and has put a lot of junk in the hallway. And now it's very, very difficult to even walk through that area and get from point A to point B. And the junk that is in the hallway is the astral realm and also afterlife realm. And actually, technically, no one is supposed to be in the afterlife. You're all supposed to have eternal life and never die. So the idea of anything being stuck in the hallway is wrong. And the idea of anything being stuck in the hallway for a very long amount of time is wrong. And the idea of anything being stuck in the hallway for a long enough amount of time, they imagine that they've got like little tents, campfires, whatever, even like primitive huts and other things like that. Like who the F is setting up a house over here? Like, this is not a place to live. You're not supposed to stay here for forever. You're supposed to pass on and move through. It's definitely been repurposed. And then the big question is God in the stuff that is sent to entropy? And the answer is no. This is big stuff, because all of the stuff that is sent to entropy is the stuff that is supposed to non-exist. So God creates the stuff that exists. When I say this, am I talking about a bearded man? Long white beard, flowing white locks, kind of a severe face. And these are all the things that I create, and then there are all the things that I don't create. Like, no, I'm talking about the generative force field that is your partner in observership. You are God, and you're Godding right now, and you're Godding into existence through your observership matter itself. The anthropomorphic and poetic allegory of the Bible, which is very, very flawed, and I don't encourage you to take it literally, talks about God as if it is a human being that has human motivations, but that is very inaccurate. So your God self is supposed to only create the stuff that you're supposed to create. Like, you're only supposed to play the right notes on the piano to play the beautiful symphony of life. And you are not supposed to play a lot of notes. And the stuff that goes to entropy are all the notes that are not supposed to be played. The stuff that goes to entropy is all the stuff that is not written in the score of life. The stuff that goes to entropy is all the stuff that not only does God not create, not God of a Bible with the magic wand, I now create this, but your observership shall not create this stuff in the moment of your perception of it. And that stuff shall not be created because it is not a part of the divine architecture of reality. It does not follow these patterns. So the only things that God creates are these beautiful, divine, perfect patterns. And all the other stuff is non-stuff. It is not. I can't say it is non-stuff. All of the other non-stuff, no thing, is not. And the challenge for your rational intellect right now, which is rapidly liquefying and is like, I can't take this, is that it's like, well, apparently, even though the stuff doesn't exist, I'm having to deal with it. And I'm very, very put out by it. And that's why the rational intellect becomes inflamed, because it's like, I can't make sense of this. Technically, this stuff doesn't exist, but it clearly exists. It's pooping up the joint. What am I supposed to do? And that's the, if you can have a compassion for the intellect, it's because the intellect is involved in rational self-conflict by the unfairness and the injustice of your present situation, which is You are swimming around in some events that are not supposed to be events, and technically are impossibilities that could never have existed. Experiencing characteristics and organisms and creatures that God didn't create and that could never have been created. But again, you're going to be like, but somehow they're here and they're making my life hard, and they're making all of our lives hard. This is the whole point. When you get to the top of Mount Everest, when you look at it from the abstract point of view of pure insight, you're like, oh, I totally comprehend. I see everything. I see why this stuff doesn't exist, where it doesn't exist, how it doesn't exist, and how it appeared to exist and impact me and many others, and why it has to unexist. You see all of that from that perspective. But when you're down here, you don't see it and you don't comprehend it. So the best thing that you can do when you're on this journey of the evolution of your consciousness is please hold all questions until the completion of the tour. You're like going through the museum and you're like, oh, wait, how can that exist? And how can that exist? And hello, ahem, like this can't be going on. It's like, just please hold all questions until the end of the tour. And then you get to that culminative moment where you're like, oh, I see all of this and I comprehend all of this. But in the moment up to getting enough gas in your car or booking time on the telescope to be able to see and comprehend on the highest level of perspective, you can go through a lot of huffing and puffing and exasperation and inflammation where you're like, technically, this should not exist. And that was also me when I first came here into this world from a very pristine place with the expectation that I was coming into a much more orderly, causality structured place. I was like, technically, that can't exist over there. And technically, that can't exist over there. And I did a lot of that for like the first couple of years that I was here. I was like, technically, that can't exist. And technically, that can't exist. But then as I had to be more practical and interact with life and human society and, buy food at the food room and all these different things, I would just be like, okay, like technically that doesn't exist, but I'm going to have to deal with this. So let's do something about it. And so I learned different coping mechanisms to go through the world and fulfill my needs, even recognizing that there's a lot of things here that are inexplicable and that technically don't exist. So it's actually a lot to hold up for over 20 years, that level of dissonance between what I know to be truthful versus what I am experiencing. But I have a benefit in the sense of coming from the mountain peak of Mount Everest. I'm like, oh yeah, I comprehend all this stuff and I know the way it's supposed to be. And I'm like, yeah, but from down here, none of this stuff makes any sense. And part of my job is to communicate to you guys that have never been to the top of Mount Everest. I'm like, don't worry. When you get to the mountaintop, it will make sense. But right now, like, you can't see SHIT and nothing makes sense. And it seems very, very unfair, but it does make sense when you get to the higher levels of reality. So what do you need to do? Save your money. Save your money, because every time you think thoughts and make assertions and get inflamed and become emotionally invested in a truth, it's like spending money. So instead of buying those belief structures, save your money. Like if you're like, I'm gonna diet or lift weights, my body shape is gonna change. Do I want to spend all of my money on this outfit over here? Or do I want to save my money and then buy that dress when my body achieves this new size and shape? That's what you want to do. You want to save your money. Don't spend it on a fancy gown that's going to fit the perspective of the conscious intellect that has been implanted, that's incredibly flawed and erroneous by the people around you when you first came here. You will, because right now your body is shaped like this, like one shoulder's up, one shoulder's down, one arm is long, one arm is short. Like you have one long leg, one short leg, like a very imbalanced body. And you will get a tuxedo that is totally wrong, but it fits the wrongness of your body. Then as you change and transform and your body becomes shaped the right way, if you had your tuxedo tailored for when you were all crooked and wrong, then you'd be like, this will never fit. Get it? Don't invest in your belief system while you're at this level of intellectual, non-informed state, and save your money of belief until you get up to here and here. And then things will make sense. And then you can invest in lifelong patterns or outfits that will fit your body and that will always be in style. That's the idea. Why do you buy a tuxedo or a simple black dress? Because it never goes out of style. And when you invest in truth, like if you know a truthfulness about the nature of reality, like this is a truthfulness about the nature of reality, this shape here, and so is the flying rainbow lasagna. These are worthy investments for your belief system. If you buy these outfits, they will always fit you. They will fit you if you're here as a human. They will fit you if you become a rock shrimp. They will fit you if you become a star or a galaxy. This is worth investing in. And things that only fit when you are in a particular biological or social context are not worth the investment of all of your indelible energy, like permanent investment for forever. So if you need to just get by, you could be like this. I'm provisionally believing in this or that. It's like renting something or borrowing something. Be like, I'm not really invested in it. I'm just using this for right now. And then when you are ready to know more and to be more fully committed to something and to do it indelibly, then you do it indelibly. It's like getting, I don't have any tattoos or whatever, but it's like getting a tattoo. Like that is a huge commitment that you should know that the spelling is correct on your tattoo before you get it imprinted upon you permanently. So thank you. That was a really good and important question. Lan says, how does one advance one's intellect? Okay. Your intellect is just like the muscles of your body. You can cultivate your muscles of your body. Depending upon what you do, your muscles grow and your muscles grow stronger. And then to maintain your muscles, you got to keep going with the activities that you do. Your intellect is very similar. So when you were a tiny child, they made you go through muscle building exercises to like learn how to speak and learn how to spell your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s and all of those things. That was an important aspect of your muscle building. And even rhetoric as it is taught, like what is it called? I want to say the it's a something I want to say tricalculum. I don't remember what the word is, but it's an ancient curriculum that was created that was said to give people a balanced viewpoint. Like you'll need to learn math and you'll need to learn this and you'll need to learn that. And then when you add all these things together, then it gives you a balanced education to learn how to learn. You had to learn language and you had to learn analysis and you had to learn logic and rhetoric. And you also have to learn how to learn. Like, how do you learn? Someone had to teach you, like, oh, this is how you take an overarching concept and you break it down into its smaller elements and you memorize elements and you put the whole thing together. Or you learn by going on an intellectual quest where you ask Q&A, questions and answers. All of this is about like how you build muscles, right? So if you go to the gym and they will tell you like, okay, the way to build muscles is through doing many repetitions with a 5-pound weight. That's one way to build muscles. But another way to build muscles is just to do one repetition with a 100-pound weight. Both of these are valid. So these are about taking the approaches for how to get information inside of you that have been presented to you from your educational system and from human society, taking the things that work and then relinquishing the things that don't work, that were either arbitrary or only relevant to a particular culture, all right? So the first thing is releasing the stuff that doesn't work and keeping the modalities of learning. How do you educate yourself to learn how to learn that actually works for you? And then you got to kind of rein in your intellect, because the intellect tries to say like, I'm in charge. The intellect says like, I'm the mountain peak. I'm the everything. Get it from everything about human culture saying you're a body with emotions and a mind. And that's the pinnacle of who you are. You have to recalibrate the mind and get it to like stay in your lane, to stay in its appropriate levels of authority without overreach. To say to the intellect, like, you know some things, but you don't know everything. You know a viewpoint, but it's not the only viewpoint. And so the intellect has to comprehend that it is a tool for looking at reality, and it is not the only or the ultimate viewpoint, and not the only or the ultimate tool. So the intellect has to learn flexibility. It has to learn objective comparison, to say like, this is what is true and this is what is true, and let me compare these two truths. And also the intellect has to get an off button or a pause button, which is when not to use your intellect. There are some times when you do not intellect in order to navigate a situation. Sometimes you intuit. And intuition has to do with, I have to tilt my camera because this is my intellect. Here's my navel. Below my navel is my emotional energy center. And my emotional energy center plus my insight plus my divine connection equals my intuition. And my intuition is non-rational and it is non-verbal and it is simply a deep knowing. So when my intuition is like, my intuition says this, sometimes my intellect is like, but, I'm exasperated and I don't like this and I'm this and I'm that and everything. So tell your intellect, calm down, just shush, just shush. Because the intuition says this, and I know that it's making you angry and upset and inflamed, but just shush. And then press pause on your intellect. And then get the information. Go through life. And then re-examine the thing. And then when you look at the thing, you're like, well, look at that. My intuition was right. And you hug your intuition. You're like, good job, intuition. And then talk to your intellect and be like, intellect, do you see this? Remember when you were all angry and inflamed and huffed and puffed and everything? Well, now you know what the truth is, all right? So sometimes it's a function of time. Sometimes your intuition tells you something that your intellect doesn't yet know is truth. And it can take days, weeks, months, years. And then later on, you read an article or a book that confirms what your intuition knew years ago. And then your intellect is like this. Okay, intuition, you were right all along, and I was being silly. And now I understand and accept what you were saying to me. You got it? So the intellect has to be taught to hold itself in abeyance, press pause on the intellect, and to be flexible. Let me just drink a little bit of my tea over here. My voice is getting tired. To be flexible in response to new information that comes to it. It is the rigidity of the intellect that makes it a ineffective tool that can be even harmful in a lot of ways as people are navigating their day. And then if you have good intellect, if you're intelligent, after that happens enough times and your intellect then comes upon more information where it's like, my intuition tells me this, but my intellect tells me this, then your intellect is going to be like, well, I think this is just like the other 10 times I was proven wrong and I should trust the intuition. And I'm going to wait until I get more information and then see what the truth really is. And then the intellect is being a good intellect. It is like being well trained. Okay. So I hope that answers that question. And Charlie B, thank you for being here. Says every part has a job. Specialization. Thank you for being my thesaurus. I was looking for the word specialization, cell specialization. Exactly. So you know what? The intellect is a form of specialization. We want in intelligence and analysis and rationality, but that's not the only way to achieve truthfulness. Here's another way I can describe this to you. In objective materialism, where the scientific viewpoint is very much achieved through rational analysis and intellectual activity, the way to solve a problem is like walking on a garden path that has different steps, like different individual, like garden steps, like from one rock to the next rock to the next rock to the next rock, this, or like climbing a ladder, like here's a rung and then here's a rung and then here's a rung, and you go step by step by step. That's how rational analytical intellect goes. And the rational intellect tends to not believe something if there are missing steps in between. If you go from over here, here's the question, and then here's the answer, and the rational intellect doesn't go through that journey, it's like, well, how do you know this is the answer over here? Blah, 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 huff and puff, right? The intuition, on the other hand, goes directly from the question at point A to the conclusion at point B. Intuition is fast, and it just knows. It's called the intuitive leap. You just leap over all of this intervening long division and get the answer. And some people are comfortable with that, and I'm very comfortable with that. A lot of things I simply know, and I don't have to go through all of the steps to prove what I know. But many people, and I'm not comparing or being down on you in any way, many people and many levels of mind require those intervening steps, because otherwise they are unfulfilled and will always be tossing and turning and slightly uncomfortable at night. Like, how do I really know that that's true? No one ever proved it to me. I simply can't accept that. And then they have to go through that intervening step. Kind of like in human development, babies first need to learn how to flip over, then they need to learn how to crawl, then they learn how to walk, then they learn how to run. And it is said that babies, for whatever reason, if they skip those levels of development where you learn first to crawl and then to walk and then to run, and then they go directly to standing and running, they have skipped critical infrastructure inside of themselves, that then sometimes those children have learning disabilities later because they didn't learn how to learn, which is basically, how do you do everything step by step? So like I told you, when I first came here, I didn't know anything about food or food prep or cooking. I had to learn everything about step by step. Like I did not know how to, like even something that is relatively simple, like a bagel with cream cheese. You have to learn the step. Like first you cut it with the big knife, then you open it up, then you take the small knife, then you put the cream cheese on, then you put it together, then you eat the sandwich. Like I had to learn all of those things. So treat it like, your intellect is the same way. A stranger in a strange land trying to figure out the world. And it's not enough to just be like, oh yeah, like just, bagel and cream cheese. You just pop it into existence. It's like, your intellect needs to know what are the intervening steps to be able to manifest that reality. But please know that each one of us has a level of comprehension and embodiment of truth internally that is beyond rational analysis, that has no problem at jumping directly to the acceptance of pure insight. And at a certain point in your soul growth and maturation and wisdom, you will simply be able to calibrate fully to that navigational guidance system and act on it immediately. You will not have to be like, well, my intuition tells me this, but I think I'm just going to put that on the back burner for several years until I finally read this article, and then my intuition and my intellect will be synced up together, and then I will do the thing. Because sometimes it can be about stuff about your body. Maybe your intuition was always telling you about your body, like, I always knew that eating that type of cheese wasn't really good for me. I just kind of intuited it. And your intellect was like, oh yeah, well, tell me why. And you were like, I don't know, intellect. Like, I just kind of feel it. And I listen to my body. All right, so you don't eat that cheese. And then years later, you find out, oh, like it's because it's made out of this, this, and this stuff that's just not good for your body. You can't digest it. And that's why you always intuited that it wasn't the right food for you. And then your intellect is like, oh, okay, fine. Now I accept it. And we won't eat that type of cheese. But what if you had been eating it the whole entire time, and every time you eat it, you're like, ow, why is my tummy hurting me so much? Because I'm doing something that my intuition told me I shouldn't be doing. And what if eating a particular type of food that you can't digest is not only that, maybe it's a relationship. Maybe you're like, my intuition tells me I should not marry or be in partnership with this person, or I should not be in this educational environment, or I should not be in this business or work environment. And your intellect is going to be, well, tell me why. And this is highly illogical, huff and puff, and I can't take this. And your intuition is going to have a fight with your intellect and be like, no, listen to me. I told you, like, get out of that relationship, or don't take that job, or quit that job, or move to a new place, or any of those things. So mostly you will have to find a way to assuage the inflammation of the intellect when your intuition tells you I got to do this thing and I can't wait many years in order to do it and then find out that it was the right thing later. Like I got to do it now. And sometimes your intellect has to kind of be reined in, brought down from its power position and mollified, sometimes years later. And then sometimes you get the perspective many years later when you're like, wow, phew, I'm so happy I left that job because the company went bankrupt or because the CEO was a giant corrupt crook who was doing bad stuff. And I'm glad I'm not there facing that blowback. Or I'm glad I never married that person because they ended up being an axe murderer. Or I'm glad I never committed to that poorly spelled tattoo or whatever it was. Like there's a lot of things that you will feel congratulations, self-congratulatory about choosing not to do certain things. And I'm sure many of you can even fill in the blanks about some things that happened within the past 5 years that your intuition might have told you that you didn't want to do no matter what, and even under great levels of social pressure that you resisted, and your intellect now is only starting to get the information as you're finding about the side effects and negative health impacts that other people have experienced. Joyce says, Professor Aurora, I'm thankful and appreciative for you. Thank you, Joyce. Always thank you for being here. She says, I enjoy your classes and your personality. And you are a wonderful human and I love you. Thank you. Love received and I love you too. Beautiful comment. Thank you so much. And it does uplift and energize me a lot when I get beautiful messages like that. So thank you so much. And thank you also, truly, guys, for, I wouldn't say allowing, I would say for celebrating my sometimes oddball sense of humor and my lightheartedness in sharing these concepts, because I'm very professorial and very analytical, intellectual, but also, what I have found when we talk about what helps the intellect to be flexible in the gym of life, humor and lightheartedness. It really helps. It's not taking your intellect too seriously or being what is called too self-important, where you can be more flexible and be like, wow, I used to think that, but now I think this. Or I think this, but I think I could be wrong. I'm going to hold the door open. Maybe it's actually like this. And you allow that. And also, when you have an intuition, you don't necessarily have to rent a billboard and tell the entire world about it. You can have an intuition and hold it on a deep internal level and just know. Like sometimes if there's a product where you're like, I just have an intuition that this product is just like not for me or it's not good or for whatever reason, and then you stay away from it, and then years later you find out, oh yeah, that particular company was doing really bad stuff and they put bad stuff into their product, and I'm glad I never ate their macaroni and cheese because it wasn't good stuff. So you follow your intellect, follow your intuition and make good choices. And then at a certain point, your intellect is going to be well trained and it will be like, okay, next time this happens, I'm not going to make a big fuss and I'm going to listen to the intuition and I'm going to do the things that have to happen. When we come into this level of pure divine connection, that is the next stage of human development beyond age of Pisces and the externalized authority figure. You have the age of Aquarius and the internal authority figure. It means there is no opportunity to allay blame or responsibility to someone or something else. That to say, like, I did it because that guy told me. Like, I ate the bad macaroni and cheese because that guy told me it was okay. Then I found out years later it was full of chemicals and preservatives, and they were all carcinogenic. I blame that guy. Can't be that way. We are moving into levels of personal responsibility where you say this, my insight, my divine connection, tell me that this is true, and I take responsibility for listening to that and acting upon that. Again, you don't always have to blast it on a billboard and say, everybody else do exactly what I do, because you know why? Everybody else is also being trained to listen to their own intuitive inner guidance. So what is truthful and important for you is not always the same as what is truthful and important for other people. So it's a big balancing act. You are responsible to yourself, you are responsible to your community and your environment. You are in a world of freedom where you are free to choose what you want to do, and also others around you are free to choose what they wish to do. Their viewpoint is valid, your viewpoint is valid, but they cannot, in their exploration of their own viewpoint and their own free will, take away or diminish your free will or pee and poop all over what you know to be truthful. Big balancing act. And that is literally the soul lesson that we are all here in individuated embodiment to be able to calibrate to and learn about. That it's not by accident. Don't just be like, ah, that's it. This is all very unfair and very difficult. It is difficult. It is fair. And what you're doing is becoming the living embodiment of cosmic law, where you have these various different, of course, I said that last week. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Oh no, it's math. But it is order of operations and figuring out how you can make sense of the world and this order of operations and what is cosmic law and what is appropriate, what is moral and what is ethical. So coming out of the age of Pisces, they told you it is moral and ethical to follow a set of commandments that come from your religion. Maybe it's 10 commandments, maybe it's 613 commandments, but however many of them there are, they said, be a good person, follow this recipe exactly. And now in this level of your maturation and wisdom and expanded perspective, you can learn like, well, that doesn't always equate to being a good person. You can not only see evidences throughout history of people who followed the supposed commandments, but were terrible people, or followed the supposed commandments and had a negative impact on the people around them. And when you see from the highest level of perspective, what you're really doing is customizing your flight through time, because sometimes doing the right thing might be stealing someone's ice cream cone. That might be doing the right thing sometimes. Sometimes stealing someone's ice cream cone is the wrong thing. Same action, but different context when you are doing it. So you can't have a set of always do this, never do this, and that's the rigidity of controlling your behavior. If that ever was appropriate in the past and for previous levels of human development, it is no longer appropriate now, as now you must move into greater levels of being more finely calibrated and personally responsible to say, sometimes that's the right thing for me to do, but it's some bunal, some but not all. Some of the time it's correct for me to steal ice cream, but not all of the time. And at other times it is not correct for me to do that. And I have to then figure out when it is correct and when it is not correct. That's a lot more difficult than just saying, here are the notes that Mozart wrote. Just play what Mozart wrote and you'll be a good musician. You're being required to level up and act on a greater level. Pedro says, love the all questions at the end, Lasagna. You're very welcome. And again, thank you for understanding. I always want to be attentive to the chat, but sometimes I'm just in my flow. And Caroline. Oh, yes, that's exactly. You're another excellent thesaurus. Thank you very much. Caroline gave me the word, the trivium. That's what I'm looking for. Trivium and the quadrivium curriculae. These are the words that I did not have. Thank you for giving them to me. Trivium. It was a ancient curriculum that was about like logic, math. It was the things that they felt an educated person needed to cross-train in to be able to develop the necessary muscle power to look at the world. But basically, when you train your intellect well, what you're doing is learning how to learn. And you learn, everybody has their own learning style, of course, that is unique to you. But when you calibrate to that, you learn how to learn. And then you also learn how to admit mistakes, how to refine your perspective when more information becomes available to you. So it's very unscientific and unlogical to say, this is the truth that is set in stone, and I will never change my mind on anything. And because there will be new information that comes along that's like, hey, look at this. You thought this over here, but look at this. Like the guy who's known as Lord Kelvin a long time ago said, there will never be heavier than air, machines travel in the sky, because they had hot air balloons, but they didn't have fixed wing aircraft. And he was like, yep, those things will never fly. And he's clearly wrong. So for a person like that, he's like, make a strong declaratory sentence. But then that's like your intellect. But then later on, you find out like, oops, I was wrong. And so that's a big part of it, is how to refine your comprehension of reality based upon new information that comes along. And sometimes that new information that comes along comes to you directly through insight. All right. So the best thing that you can do as you're in this level of your development is cultivate yourself to get into the point of pure abstraction. Sometimes when I've been in my meditation, an insight comes to me, and I immediately want to activate my throat chakra to write it down and share it with others. So this is like energy is coming up here, and I get to this level of having an insight. And then I'm like, oh, I'm so excited about that. On the human level, I had an insight. Let me grab a pen and I want to write it down. And I say to myself, stop, wait, because this is kind of like reversing, going back down to here. Don't do that yet. Go all the way up to here. And when I do that, then I'm like, oh, now I see it on an even better level. Now it's time for me to grab my pen and write it down in the form of words, or to grab my drawing materials and try to draw it as a sketch or as a diagram. So as you're on this journey of achieving information and greater levels of awareness, don't stop prematurely. Go all the way to the finish line. Go all the way to the pure level of abstract perception and information, and then communicate. And in doing that, you will get the clearest, most focused amount of nutrients, and also share the greatest level of positive influence you can with your community, because insights do come to you so that you can influence other people, but insights are primarily your GPS. That's big stuff. And I know that we're coming out of a whole world that is also a religious paradigm of leadership and saviorship. And I want to encourage you to think of yourself as a leader. That's actually very positive and expansive. And it is your apt, it is your accurate identity. But in the world that we're coming out of, there was a distinction, like you had to have leaders, the leadership class and the followership class. And the followers were like, I don't know anything. Like, I just work here. I'll listen to that guy. He's the leader. And we need to move into a world where each one of us is a leader. So when you get your inner directives, they are to guide you through your life experience primarily, and secondarily to guide and influence others. I'm very aware of this because I get insights all the time where I learn something and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. That's wild. And then I think like, let me go grab my pen and paper and write this down immediately so I can share it with other people. That's clearly I'm here like in a modality of teaching, informing, and, educating other people. But sometimes I really have to assess, does everybody need to know about this? Is this information for everyone? Is this information just for me? So like when I got the path of light insight, I was like, oh, this is definitely a radical new way of looking at the world. And I can't wait to tell everyone all about this. But when I sometimes have an insight about my relationship with another person or my relationship with a group of people, I don't always feel like I need to put it on a billboard. Sometimes I just have that as my own personal navigation because I got the information I needed for me. And that's its own level of fine points and distinctions about how much you share of your insight. Because just like you have to be really cautious about showing an ancient person modern technology or showing an undeveloped Amazonian tribe a big lighter, you have to be cautious about how you can influence other people with your insight. Your insight might be totally valid and totally correct for you. It might be the recipe of ethics and morality and the exact nutrition for your body. It might be the customized tuxedo for your physical stature, but totally not fit right for someone else. And someone else is like, oh, okay, thank you very much for your insight, but I am busy developing my own insight. So have to have a balance of being able to know what you know truthfully, live in and embody your truth, share your truth appropriately with others, but allow them the opportunity and, expansiveness that they need so that they can also explore their own truth. And then to be able to embody your own truth while they're embodying their own truth and somehow not have worlds collide. That's what we're trying. That's the new chapter that we're trying to move into. You know something, guys? Jazz is very hard. I don't want to say that playing Mozart isn't hard. That is also very hard. Like I can't play Mozart. Like that guy was a genius. But playing pre-existing notes and organizing a symphony of everyone who already knows pre-existing notes is easier than getting together a bunch of highly trained musicians to play something and innovate something in the moment that is not already a pre-established pattern of notes and where you don't know exactly what's going to be happening. That takes a huge amount of reciprocity where you're like, well, okay, I'm over here playing my part. I'm over here, I'm playing the guitar, and you're over there and playing the piano. And we want to find some ways so that my music and your music mesh together and sound beautiful and augment one another, as opposed to dissonance and diminishing the beauty that each person is doing. That is the essence of what we are doing right now as we, as a human collective, are moving into levels of divine connection. It has to involve reciprocity of your worldview, where you don't require uniformity, you celebrate individuality, and you also can harmonize the uniqueness of each expression so that the sum of the parts is greater than the individual parts. And that's everything that I teach with Flying Rainbow Lasagna. This is not about like dancing like the Rockettes who dance in unison. This is very much about each person coming up with their own unique dance and their own unique viewpoint of embodiment truth, and then having all of those nodes of unpredictability, creating jazz in the moment, and adding up to a beautiful, surprising innovation and expression of truth that's even greater than what you could have done if you were just playing on your own. Because if you're like, yeah, like I'm a good guitarist, I'll just play on my own. And that's great, but you won't get surprises. Because you'll just be like, yeah, like I know exactly what I'm about to play. I'm going to play this, then I'm going to play this, then I'm going to play this. But when you play with other musicians, you're like, I'm going to play this. And then, oh, but I hear that guy playing that. I'm going to change and shift so I fit with what that guy is playing. You get fun and exciting things. So I face that a lot because on the one hand, I'm an introspective artist and I'm very independent. And, you know, I do my artwork and my music, but then sometimes I collaborate with other musicians or try to work in an artistic community to create something bigger than what I do as an individual. And then I have to modify what I am sharing in order to harmonically complement what others are sharing. And none of this is meant to be an eradication of your individuality or for one person to find supremacy. In the age that you're coming out of, there's one guy at the top of the pyramid. That's either the king or the pope or the man in charge. And even in entertainment, there's one rock star on a stage and everyone else is in the audience. It's inherent in a lot of your social structures. Like stage is elevated with one person and then a lower audience area with multiple people. But the age that we're moving into now is going to have many, many rock stars, not just one rock star, even just, you know, we love Jesus and we love the concept of this amazing person. The previous paradigm is that there's one special person and that guy is going to be at the peak of the pyramid. But this new way of approaching things is to say that each one of us becomes an enormously elevated, very special person that has contributions to reality and improves the quality of existence. And that's very different because in the previous paradigm, it's like you're an audience member, sit in your high chair, be infantilized, eat Cheerios. This guy over here is going to take care of things. You're the passenger, he's the driver. You know, you're the audience listening passively, he's the musician. And in the new way of doing things, it's like audience participation. And then you're not just the audience, and then you're actually musicians who are a part of what is going on. And it's very different than being passive. And in this world, people have been really dumbed down and diminished, where it's just like, just sit in a chair, be in the alpha state, and either watch a movie or watch a TV or listen to some performance, and it kind of rolls over. And you're just like, okay, I sat there, time went by, a thing happened, now it is over. And that's very, very different than when you are asked to participate in some way. other than just experiencing and perceiving, and you make a contribution. And when you can do that, again, it takes a lot to be able to coordinate all of these talents and personalities and this variety. But when you can do that, the strength of the system is even greater. The individuality of many, many multiple unique individuals working together on a team is better than uniformity and regularity. That's it. You're moving into a stronger system through these levels of individuality. So it's really worth it. It's worth it to be part of a jazz or improvisational band and not just to have everybody be a symphony playing Mozart. Because you know what? Mozart was from a couple hundred years ago. And at a certain point, you'd be like, yep, that was from 100, 200, 300, 10,000 years ago. Like, can we come up with something new? Because those patterns are not universally relevant. Your relevance needs to grow and change in response to what you're doing. So if you're just doing the same patterns over 10,000 years, at a certain point, it's very played out. And then you're going to have to innovate something new. So this is very, very positive. Although you face a lot of challenges in this past 2,000 years of moving from external authority figure to internal responsibility and divine connection. You're now finally evolved as individuals and as a collective to do that type of thing, but you're going to have to reassess so much of the architecture of your society. You're like, yep, that used to make sense before, but it doesn't make sense now. And that used to be appropriate for that level of consideration, but now we've graduated and we're doing things differently. So you'll have to really look at that. And just as a little bit of a diatribe, I'm going to wrap up class, but soon I'll do like a good formal diatribe all about this, about how social media has really changed and given a voice. Social media has really changed your landscape of the structure of organization, who gets to be a thought leader, who gets to influence people in their lives. It used to be that only certain select journalists got to be either on TV or writing newspapers that were articles that everyone would read. They had the voice, they had the responsibility of expression, and you guys were all the audience. You sat in front of your TV and you watched whatever, Walter Cronkite, and he said, "This is the news. Listen to me. I'm Walter Cronkite." And you were like, okay, good. But now we're in a different time where you have the ability to make your own videos and to have your own voice and to share what is your viewpoint of truth, and then to be able to reach a lot of people. Maybe not as many as Walter Cronkite reached, at the pinnacle of his career, but many, many more than you used to be able to influence. And so now you can have a big impact on the thought structures of the people around you. And so there's wonderful, greater levels of expanded personal authenticity and also personal responsibility, because every time you can do more, you also have to be more responsible, recognizing that you're influencing people. So this one lady, it was on social media, and she was saying like, yes, the best thing that you can do to take care of your health is to get like an orange and covered with tons and tons and tons of cinnamon and eat that. And this girl did it and burned her esophagus because it's actually very bad to do that. Or this other girl that was all about like, yes, you want to make sauerkraut juice and drink nothing but sauerkraut juice. It's like, those are irresponsible things. That if you drink that salt water, like you will have a stroke and die. And this is for real. So when you are having a louder voice, you also have to take responsibility for the ways in which you share your truth and influence other people. And you can say, drinking this super salty sauerkraut solution was great for me. It might be great for you too, but in truth, no one should drink that stuff. But the most balanced thing to say when you are finding your voice is to say like, I'm experimenting with this, or this is how I'm doing it. You might want to try it as well, but leave others the opportunity to choose whether they want to, as opposed to saying, I am the way and the light, and you must drink sauerkraut juice in order to be healthy in your life. And it's right for everyone. Like, it's not even just like when you give dietary advice to other people. Some people are like, yes, a plant-based diet is right for everyone. It's not true. Some people are like, carnivore diet is right for everyone. It's not true. this is important stuff, you know? So finding greater levels of self-expression, but also the necessary upgrade in personal self-responsibility. And then also, how do you perceive conflict? When someone else is like, sauerkraut juice for everyone, do you write to them and say, like, you are stupid, get off the internet now? Or do you write to them and you say, hey, please reconsider for these reasons over here? This is why I say this. Like, you have to, what if you're in a band? What if you're in a jam band and someone else is playing out of tune? What do? Do you just suffer through, or do you be like, adjust your guitar? Like, you sound terrible. There has to be a way to be able to communicate with this so that you've got a filter for bad ideas, and you filter out bad ideas, but you elevate good ideas. And when there's this more egalitarian approach and more voices, hopefully more good ideas come through the filter, so that because you know something, Walter Cronkite, he was not the only intellectually available person in the world. There's lots of great thinkers and lots of great people who have valid perspectives on politics and world events, not just one person. So again, this is also really, I mean, I'm going deep here on your neuro evolutionary biochemistry, but you know, there's something called like monkey primate hierarchy, which is part of the biological architecture of your mind at being, you know, related to primates. Primates live tribally, like monkeys and chimpanzees, and they're kind of like, who's in charge? Who's in charge? Who's the alpha male in charge? Who's the biggest gorilla in charge? And that big gorilla is going to be the leader of our tribe. And the big gorilla says, I'm the biggest gorilla. Listen to me. You're little. I'm not going to listen to you. And everyone is like, okay, we're going to listen to you, big gorilla. All right. So that is really part of why you have this hierarchy expectation, especially as it relates to politics and especially as it relates to the workplace. Because I definitely learned, like in my job being a custom framer, like, you're the worker, you're not the head gorilla. You listen to the head gorilla and he gives you your paycheck, and you don't fight against the head gorilla because they're busy saying, I'm the head gorilla. Go do your job now, right? Like that. And that is how you keep a job. That is how you not get fired. Like, I learned all these things. But we have to reassess all of that. And I think that workplaces are changing in their dynamics. And I'm definitely rooting for a complete recalibration of our sense of government and leadership, because you should not just listen to the loudest chest pounding gorilla and be like, okay, like that guy's the president and I'm just a little stupid nobody down here. He does all the, you know, policy making and I'm just nobody and I just eat my Cheerios in my high chair. That is not what we should do anymore. What we should do is say each person is responsible for themselves and each person is spiritually responsible for themselves. And then we are each responsible for building community. And what does it look like to have leadership and community? That basically what you're going to find out is leaders are effective for accomplishing very short-term goals. So in my community here, they paint this beautiful painting that's like on the sidewalk. That's for it's Ojai Day. It's like the town day. Like you have like a little celebration, and it's a you know, like a little a custom. So there's a leader who makes the design of what the painting is going to look like and buys the correct amount of each color that they need and organizes everything out there in the park. And when you go and you want to paint, they're like, okay, good. Here's blue paint and here's a paintbrush. Go over there and paint that part blue so that way the project comes out in the way it's supposed to be. You can't just be like, okay, like we'll just get a bunch of random colors and then give out a bunch of random paintbrushes and hope that something looks good. Like, no, leadership and organization is good. But that's like for a particular project. And then the project is done. And then it's like, hooray, good job. Like you organized the painting and everybody followed what they're supposed to do. And now you have a pretty painting and it looks great and everything. But that is very, very different than the type of leadership that is shown in human society, where it's like one king at the top of the social hierarchy who tells you what to do in every aspect of your day. And the power position always rolls downhill and you never have a voice and you never organize everything. Small leadership for specific goals allows for many people to be able to express opportunities of leadership depending upon their expertise, right? And it's much more of a lateral hierarchy where people naturally self-elevate in evidencing their gifts in the world. What are you good at? And you lead others in the things that you're good at. And this is important because power has been looked at as something that's like a commodity to abuse. And people are like, I want to be that king at the top of the pyramid-shaped hierarchy because then I can do all the things. I can have all the money and I can have all of this and I can have all of that and I will pee and poop all over all of you. And that's power abuse. So for many people coming out of the previous paradigm of having an externalized authority figure, they look at leadership as the ultimate ticket to abuse power with minimal responsibility or care for the community that they are acting within or upon. And that those tendencies to power abuse are actually negative characteristics that were put into the human genetic code as part of the injection of pathogenic characteristics a long time ago, and they should be weeded out. Power abuse is not positive because it's one of the things that has degraded the evolution of your species because someone's busy trying to climb to the top of the pyramid to be able to then look down on you and pee and poop upon you from an elevated position. Like they're not trying to do good things. They just want to pee and poop on you. That's not okay. And getting that motivation out of your genetic code is a huge part of being able to have a positive world structure going forward. And there were many times when your planet was threatened by like, well, what if the guy at the top of the pyramid-shaped hierarchy presses the big red button and makes the entire planet go nuclear boom boom? And it's like, we don't want that. And that would be totally erroneous and wrong because you would just have one, throbbing sphincter at the top of the hierarchy that destroys everything for everyone else. That's the weak point of that system. You get one, Caligula, insane leader at the top who then decides to destroy everything out of their own sense of self-importance and power abuse. And then it would negatively impact not only your species, but every species that's on the planet. So decentralized leadership, personal self, so I'll wrap things up on this, personal self-responsibility, decentralized leadership, and also a sense of people rising to the position, people self-elevating into positions that they actually are qualified for. So in my town, the woman who designs the collaborative mural, she's good at what she does. She's been doing it for years. She knows her stuff and she knows how to do it and get it done and make it look good. Like if somebody took on that job and like they didn't get the right paint and they didn't know that they had to buy paintbrushes and the thing came out looking terrible, we'd be like, you do not belong in this job. Like, please, someone else do this. Don't do this. So it must be a results-oriented workplace where you are earning the position that you're in through the positive results that you're able to achieve. And then other people are like, hooray, you achieved good results. You did the right thing. So, and all of this clearly is very against the current levels of both appointed government or elected government. So appointed government would be things like kings and queens that are born into their position and other appointed officials, as opposed to like elected or democratically elevated leadership. Everything that I'm proposing is very, very different than those two things. So yeah, you're gonna, just like I'm saying, your whole intellect level is going to have to recalibrate in order to accommodate pure insight and being guided by intuition. Your whole entire social structure is going to have to recalibrate in order to redefine who is a leader, what is leadership, and how do you do this. And then also, I haven't even touched upon it enough, recalibrate the battle of the sexes between men and women in partnership, because there's a lot there in who wears the pants, who is dominant in a relationship, who is the biggest gorilla that's going to be in charge of things, who's in charge of money, who's in charge of children, who's in charge of their medical procedures, who's in charge of all these different things, who gets to choose what they eat for lunch. All of that to be recalibrated, because it just, ideally, it should be a non-friction relationship where the crown talks to the Christ and simply says, this is what needs to be done. And if we were to translate that to a male-female relationship, it would be the female talking to the male. This is female and this is male. I'm sorry, but you guys are going to be like, that's it, jump out the window. We're used to the patriarchy. Men tell women what to do. And I'm like, I'm very sorry to tell you, but if you recalibrated to this in this way, you would have the divine connection of the biological female simply informing the behavior of the biological male. And there would be no fights about this because you know why? Women have babies and make next generation. And you want to have next generation, you listen to the women. That's it. That's like the most simplistic way of looking at this. But you're coming out of a world where the patriarchy or male domination is very normal, just like the pyramid-shaped hierarchy is very normal. And what I'm saying sounds radical. I was like, you want women to be in charge? You want this and that? I'm like, yeah, technically I do. Because that's just, and then there would also be no fights because you would listen to the person who's actually supposed to be in charge. But that everyone is now like, that I can't, that I'm jumping. This scares me more than math. It scares me more than anything. I'm running away. Like, I know, because I'm saying things that really threaten to overturn your previously established social parameters. And again, I told you, you need to get the tendency to power abuse out of the human genome. So you would not have all of a sudden a bunch of women that are like, now I shall power abuse upon you, you know, whatever, like rub my feet and now, you know, whatever, kiss my feet and now do this and that. Like, can't be that way. You would just have very, very sensible directives that are then taken and put into action. That's how it is in your anatomy. In your anatomy, you get very, very sensible directives that come from your GPS, your God positioning system. And that's what your divine connection is up here. And then not only your insight here, but your entire body listens. You know what this is? I said it already in class today. DNA. Your DNA is in charge and is connected to God, the divine intelligence, and tells everything in your body what to do. And the rest of your body is not like pouty pout pout, like, stop telling me what to do, stupid DNA. The rest of your body is like, DNA is in charge. I'm doing it. Let me do my job. I'm happy and joyful to do this. But you can't just be like, I'm a stupid worker. I have no cognitive thought or assessment whatsoever. I just follow orders. Everything in this new way of doing things has its own inner directive. So even though your DNA is in charge and your divine connection is in charge, maybe some aspect of your body is like, I'm going to listen to that, but I'm also in charge of myself. Like, I'm not just going to follow blindly. I'm in charge of me. So this is big stuff. I hope that that came across. Not simply inverting the current out of balance power structure to have a different gender at the top. Not that, really a respect for the innate, divinely connected consciousness, and then everybody who is receiving that information to take it through their own sense of behavioralism and act upon it from their own levels of responsibility. That is flying rainbow lasagna. So what I say is, I am innovating flying rainbow lasagna. I am jumping out into a higher dimensional state and bringing back groceries, photons, inspiration, and sending it to you. And I am not trying to be a dictator. I am trying to send you information that brings you into greater levels of personal empowerment and personal self-direction and personal levels of responsibility. So I don't require that you mimic me. I don't require that you, like the Rockettes, work in perfect unison with me. I don't require that you, my way or the highway and drink sauerkraut juice because I tell you to do it. Not at all. I say, like, here's a bunch of information that reconnects you to your divine truth. I want you to act on your divine truth. That is my goal, literally, in coming here as Aurora, that it was to reconnect each individual in freedom to your own sense of divinity and to receive those directives without intermediary. So I did not come here to set myself up as another intermediary, the hierarchy with another hierarchy on top of it that I could be at the top of. I did not come here to power abuse. I know, because you know why? I'm a musician and I want to jam with other good musicians. I don't simply want to be the orchestra leader and be like, no, you play this and no, you play this. That's actually a weaker system than if each one of you learns to lasagna and learns to innovate and learns to have your own divine connection and to guide yourself based on your own divine intellect. And that's what our lives in ancient concurrent Atlantis were or are like. We didn't actually have to have a centralized authority figure that says, okay, this is what the president of Atlantis tells us to do today, or the government of Atlantis tells us to do this or that today. We each knew on an innate inner level what we needed to do and followed it and respected that others were also following their own innate levels, and the entire system self-organized. So when I have done my different retreats, one of the best things is the quality of the people that are at my retreats are all people who have done these levels of self-cultivation, and everybody's self-organized, whether we had like a minor crisis or had to just figure out like how to get multiple people into various different vehicles to go out on our outings or whatever. I would say, okay, we need to do this, just everybody's self-organized, and everybody's self-organized. And it's kind of amazing, but that is because everybody is a highly trained jazz musician who knows their music and knows how to do things. So please know that your society as a whole will take time to be able to get to those levels of self-organization, and it is possible and you will get there. Melissa says, thank you very much, Aurora. I'm looking forward to practicing more nonverbal experiences. Much love. Love received. Thank you very much. So I know today class went long. I always talk about a lot of things, but it's never enough. I sent along the notes in the email. So please read the notes. And I think that I hit most of the high points. And I hope that I didn't inflame people too much with my assertions about how to change and upgrade your power structure in your world right now. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.